The radio crackled with static. "This is SEAL Team Echo. We're pinned down, taking heavy fire from all sides, requesting immediate backup." The response came back cold and definitive. "Negative, Echo. No assets available. You're on your own." What happened next would become the most legendary rescue in Special Forces history. When the final shot echoed through the valley, 52 enemy combatants lay dead. Not a single American life was lost. The shooter was never officially identified, never received a medal, and the entire operation was classified and buried in Pentagon archives. This is the story of how a forgotten warrior emerged from the shadows to save 12 men who had been left to die. Lieutenant Commander James "Hawk" Carter pressed his back against the jagged limestone wall, bullets whining overhead like angry hornets. His tactical vest was shredded, his left arm bleeding from shrapnel, and his rifle was down to its last magazine. Around him, 11 other Navy SEALs were spread across the narrow ravine floor, each man fighting for his life against overwhelming odds in this unmapped territory of the Appalachian Mountains. Contact front, contact left, contact right. The radio chatter was desperate as enemy muzzle flashes lit up the canyon walls from 4 directions. They'd walk straight into the perfect killing ground in what intelligence had called Grid Zone Unknown 7. Major Rachel Wolf Reeves was positioned 25 meters to Carter's left, her designated marksman rifle tracking targets along the northern cliff face. "I count at least 52 hostiles," she reported through gritted teeth. "Maybe more. They've got us in a complete kill box." Reeves was one of the few female operators who had made it through SEAL qualification training, her exceptional marksmanship skills making her an invaluable asset to the team. But even her precision fire couldn't overcome the overwhelming numbers they faced. Sergeant Marcus "Doc" Martinez crawled through the dirt to reach Carter's medical kit already open. "Hold still, Commander," he said quickly, applying a pressure bandage to Carter's bleeding arm. The former combat medic had saved countless lives in Fallujah back in 2004. Now he was keeping his team alive, one wound at a time, while simultaneously returning fire when needed. "Thanks, Doc." Carter nodded, checking his ammunition count with growing concern. "How are we looking?" "Not good, sir," Martinez replied, his usually calm voice tight with tension. Jackson took a round to the leg. "Chen's down to his last mag. We got maybe 15 minutes of fight left in us at this rate." The mission had started as routine reconnaissance. Satellite imagery had detected unusual activity in this uncharted region of the Appalachians coordinates that didn't exist on any official map. SEAL Team Echo was tasked with investigating potential hostile installations, gathering intelligence, and reporting back before enemy forces could establish permanent operations in this strategically important but completely unknown territory. But intelligence had been catastrophically wrong about this being an uninhabited wilderness area. They'd been wrong about the terrain accessibility. Most critically, they'd been wrong about the enemy's sophisticated defensive preparations in what appeared to be a naturally formed but tactically perfect ambush site. This wasn't some random encounter with local militia. This was a professional military unit with advanced equipment that had been using this hidden valley as a training ground and operational base completely off the radar of Western intelligence services. "Hawk, we've got heavy machine guns positioned on the eastern ridgeline," Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez screamed over the thunderous gunfire. "They're trying to pin us down for a complete massacre." Carter keyed his radio with blood-slicked fingers. "Mountain Command, this is Echo Actual. We are in extreme danger in Grid Zone Unknown 7, surrounded by superior numbers with rapidly depleting ammunition. How copy?" The response took nearly a full minute, an absolute eternity in life or death combat time. "Echo Actual. This is Command. We show no available air assets for immediate close air support. Army aviation is 70 minutes out due to terrain difficulties. Can you hold your current position?" 70 minutes might as well have been 70 hours. At their current catastrophic rate of ammunition expenditure, they'd be completely overrun within 15 minutes maximum. "Negative, Command. We need immediate assistance now, or you're going to be explaining 12 KIA to families back home." Another devastating barrage of automatic weapons fire forced Carter to press himself deeper behind his rocky cover. The enemy was methodically advancing from multiple directions using professional fire and movement tactics, combined with intimate knowledge of this unmapped terrain that gave them every possible advantage. 23 miles away in a modest hunting cabin tucked deep in the forest, Master Sergeant William Ghost Reynolds lowered his morning coffee and turned up the volume on his old military radio scanner. At 68 years old, his weathered face bore the marks of decades of service, but his eyes remained sharp and alert, missing nothing. The cabin walls were adorned with faded photographs of military teams from operations long since classified alongside vintage rifles and tactical equipment that told the story of a lifetime of service. Reynolds had been monitoring unusual radio traffic for weeks. Something about the encrypted transmissions had felt wrong. Patterns that reminded him of old Soviet communication protocols he hadn't encountered since the Cold War. His instincts honed through decades of special operations told him something significant was happening in these mountains. He reached for a dog-eared notebook filled with handwritten frequency codes and began methodically working through military channels that officially he shouldn't still have access to. When he heard SEAL Team Echo's desperate call for help, his body tensed with the muscle memory of countless combat operations. "Grid Zone Unknown 7, Reynolds muttered, pulling out an old topographical map of the region. His finger traced to a remote valley he knew all too well. Damn it, that's the old Soviet listening post location. Reynolds' mind flashed back to 1985 to an operation deep behind the Iron Curtain. He'd been part of a black ops team sent to gather intelligence on a KGB training facility in East Germany. The mission had nearly ended in disaster when their team was compromised. Only through exceptional marksmanship and battlefield awareness had Reynolds managed to extract his team with minimal casualties. He set down the radio and walked to a locked cabinet in the corner of the cabin. The heavy steel door opened to reveal an array of precision weapons, relics from his time in service maintained with religious dedication. His hands moved automatically to a custom Remington M40A6 rifle with a Schmidt & Bender PMTY 525-56 scope. This wasn't standard issue. This was a master craftsman's personal tool modified over decades for unmatched accuracy. "Not today," Reynolds said quietly, loading his pack with handcrafted .338 Lapua Magnum rounds, each one meticulously hand-loaded for optimal ballistic performance. "Not on my watch." As he prepared his equipment with practiced efficiency, Reynolds' gaze fell on a photograph tucked into the frame of his mirror. It showed a younger version of himself standing alongside another SEAL, both men grinning despite the desert dust caking their faces. Operation Desert Storm 1991. Jack Carter's arm was slung around Reynolds' shoulder, the brotherhood of combat evident in their posture. Reynolds paused, his weathered fingers tracing the outline of his old friend's face. Jack had saved his life during that deployment, taking a bullet meant for Reynolds during a particularly vicious firefight. Jack hadn't made it home. "I promised you, Jack," Reynolds whispered to the photo. "I swore I'd look after your boy if anything happened to you." He checked his tactical radio, setting it to the frequency SEAL Team Echo was using. Then he reached for his laptop, scanning recent military deployment news until he found what he was looking for: a small notice about a SEAL team conducting training exercises in the Appalachian region. The team commander's name jumped out at him: Lieutenant Commander James Carter, Jack's son. Reynolds' jaw set with grim determination. He shouldered his rifle and pack, moving with the fluid efficiency of a man half his age. Time to keep that promise. Carter spotted a subtle movement on the northern ridge, a flicker of shadow that didn't match the chaotic patterns of the firefight. He adjusted his tactical scope, trying to get a better view, but the angle was wrong. "Wolf, check your 3 o'clock high on the ridge," he called to Reeves. "Possible new hostile position." Reeves swiveled her rifle, scanning carefully before responding. "Negative visual. Whatever was there is gone now." The enemy forces were equipped with state-of-the-art thermal imaging, sophisticated night vision capabilities, and military-grade communication systems. They knew the exact position of each SEAL and were coordinating their assault with the precision of a military academy textbook operation. Carter had been in tough situations before: Baghdad, Kandahar, off the Somali coast. But this was different. This had been planned. Someone knew they were coming, and that realization sent ice through his veins. "Check your comms," he ordered suddenly. "All units inspect your equipment for tracking devices." Martinez was the first to find it, a tiny transmitter expertly hidden within the battery compartment of their secure radio. "Sir," he said, voice low and dangerous, "we've been compromised from the inside." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just an ambush. It was a betrayal. Someone with high-level clearance had set them up to die in this remote valley. A fresh barrage of gunfire cut short any further discussion. Their position was becoming increasingly untenable. Carter watched as the enemy forces began a coordinated advance, using interlocking fields of fire to systematically close the net around his trapped team. Reynolds moved through the forest like a ghost, decades of fieldcraft allowing him to traverse the difficult terrain in near-complete silence. His ANPRC-17G radio, a piece of equipment technically he shouldn't possess as a retired operator, monitored both the SEAL team's communications and the enemy's encrypted channels. Years of signals intelligence work had given Reynolds an uncanny ability to break simple field codes, and what he was hearing confirmed his worst fears. The attacking force was using modified Russian tactical procedures, professional mercenaries with serious backing and intelligence support. Reynolds reached a rocky outcropping that provided a perfect overview of the valley below. He unslung his rifle, setting up his shooting position with practiced precision. A collapsible bipod steadied the front of the rifle, while a small leather sandbag supported the stock. From this elevation, Reynolds had clear sight lines to almost the entire battlefield. The distance was extreme, over 1,500 meters to the nearest target. For most shooters, even skilled military snipers, this would be at the outer edge of effective range. But Reynolds wasn't most shooters. He pulled out a small weather meter, checking wind speed and direction. He noted temperature, humidity, and barometric pressure. Each of these factors would affect the bullet's trajectory over such extreme distances. Reynolds made the necessary calculations in his head, adjusting his scope accordingly. Through the high-powered optic, Reynolds could see the SEAL team's desperate situation with perfect clarity. His experienced eye quickly assessed their remaining ammunition, defensive positions, and the enemy's tactical approach. The SEALs had maybe 10 minutes before they were completely overrun. What happened next would require shooting skills that existed in perhaps fewer than a dozen people on the planet. Reynolds took a deep, measured breath, his heart rate slowing as decades of training took over. He identified the most immediate threat, a heavy machine gun crew setting up on the eastern ridge. The gunner was preparing to lay down suppressive fire that would pin the SEALs while assault teams moved in for the kill. Reynolds measured the distance, 647 meters. He calculated wind drift temperature variables and the Coriolis effect from the Earth's rotation. At this distance, even the planet's curvature had to be considered. He exhaled half a breath and held the remainder, his finger taking up the first pressure on the trigger. Suddenly, a distinctly different sound cut through the chaos of battle, a sharp, authoritative crack that stood out clearly from the enemy's assault rifles and support weapons. One of the prominent muzzle flashes on the eastern ridge went permanently dark. "What the hell was that?" Reeves called out, rapidly adjusting her tactical scope. Before anyone could formulate a response, another precise crack echoed from somewhere high above the hidden valley. A second enemy position fell permanently silent. Carter grabbed his high-powered binoculars, desperately scanning the towering cliff faces that surrounded their position like natural fortress walls. "Anyone have any visual contact on friendly forces?" "Negative," came the immediate chorus of responses. "We're completely isolated down here." But they weren't isolated. Someone was positioned up there, watching, calculating, preparing to engage with deadly precision. The mysterious sniper fire continued with mechanical, almost supernatural accuracy. Every single shot resulted in a confirmed kill. Every elimination removed an enemy combatant who had been pouring devastating suppressive fire into the valley just seconds before. "Holy Christ," whispered Martinez, his voice filled with awe. "Whoever that shooter is, they haven't missed a single target." The enemy fighters were beginning to show signs of serious panic. Frantic commands were being shouted in what sounded like multiple Eastern European languages as they desperately attempted to locate the source of the precision sniper fire that was systematically destroying their carefully coordinated assault. Carter's tactical radio suddenly crackled with a completely unfamiliar voice, calm, controlled, and speaking with quiet, deadly professional authority. "SEAL Team Echo, this is Ghost 6. Maintain your defensive positions and allow me to work." Carter's spine stiffened at the unexpected communication. "Ghost 6, this is Echo Actual. Immediately identify yourself. What's your unit designation and mission authority?" There was a momentary pause filled in only by the sound of another precision shot finding its mark. No official unit commander, just an interested observer who strongly disapproves of seeing American servicemen getting shot at by foreign operatives. Another precise crack from the elevated position. Another enemy gunman permanently eliminated. The mysterious voice continued with tactical professionalism. I count 44 remaining hostiles. They're attempting to execute a coordinated flanking maneuver on your southwestern approach. Strongly recommend you immediately reposition 4 men to cover that critical vulnerability. Carter didn't hesitate for even a second. Reeves, Martinez, Rodriguez, Williams. Southwest defensive positions move now. As his operators repositioned with practiced military efficiency, the unknown sniper's fire shifted seamlessly to provide comprehensive covering fire. It was like having a guardian angel with perfect marksmanship and unlimited ammunition. But Carter had never heard of any friendly forces operating in this completely uncharted territory. Ghost 6, what's your current operational position? How did you acquire intelligence about our mission parameters? Observed your helicopter insertion at 0400 hours local time, came the measured response. Been monitoring your movement and intercepting enemy communications since your arrival. When you encountered this prepared ambush, I determined you would require immediate tactical support for survival. Carter processed this information quickly. Whoever this was had been watching them for hours, which raised serious operational security questions. But right now, those questions were less important than survival. Are you currently active military personnel? An extended pause filled with the sound of distant gunfire. Then, I was military. Different time, different wars. The precision sniper fire was absolutely devastating in its clinical professional effectiveness. Each shot was placed with surgical accuracy, systematically targeting the most tactically dangerous enemy positions first. Crews served weapons, mortar teams, and field commanders directing the coordinated assault. But it wasn't merely exceptional marksmanship. The mysterious shooter was demonstrating comprehensive understanding of advanced special operations tactics that clearly indicated extensive professional military training. He was systematically forcing the enemy to abandon their prepared positions by eliminating their protective cover, then methodically engaging them as they scrambled for alternative defensive positions. Reynolds worked through his target priority list with methodical precision. Through his scope, he could read the battlefield like an open book, identifying command elements by their behavior patterns, locating communications specialists by their equipment, isolating the most dangerous weapon systems by their tactical positioning. Each shot required complete recalculation of ballistic variables, the changing wind patterns in the valley, the different elevations of targets, the varying distances, all demanded perfect mathematical compensation. Reynolds made these adjustments instinctively, his decades of experience translating into fluid natural movements. He could see Carter directing his team with professional competence. The young commander was adapting quickly to the changing tactical situation, making optimal use of the breathing room Reynolds' precision fire was creating. Jack's boy had turned out well. There was a moment of quiet pride before Reynolds refocused on his lethal work. Through his radio, Reynolds monitored the enemy communications, picking up fragments of panicked chatter. His Russian was rusty, but he caught enough to understand their confusion and growing fear. They had prepared for an ambush against a small SEAL team, not for a phantom shooter who seemed able to strike from impossible distances with unerring accuracy. Reynolds noticed a particular voice emerging as the central command element, someone issuing orders with authority and tactical understanding. The accent was distinctive, triggering a memory from long ago. Echo Actual, be advised. Reynolds transmitted. Enemy field commander is attempting to coordinate a fighting withdrawal toward the valley's northern exit. If they successfully reach those concealed vehicles, they'll return with significant reinforcements and heavy weapon systems. Carter's response came back immediately. Ghost 6, are you capable of interdicting their withdrawal route? Currently developing a tactical solution to that problem. Reynolds adjusted his position, slightly focusing his scope on the narrow ravine that formed the valley's northern exit point. He could see movement there, disciplined fighters establishing a covered evacuation corridor while maintaining suppressive fire on the SEAL positions. In the center of this activity was a tall figure issuing commands, the tactical leader. Through his high magnification scope, Reynolds could see the man's face clearly. Recognition struck him like a physical blow. Viktor Zakharov, former Spetsnaz commander, a ghost from the Cold War that should have stayed buried in the past. Reynolds' mind flashed back to Berlin 1989. A covert operation gone wrong, a firefight in an abandoned warehouse, Jack Carter bleeding out on the concrete floor, while Zakharov escaped into the night. Not this time. Reynolds calculated the most difficult shot yet, 1723 meters through shifting crosswinds with the target moving between positions of cover. At this distance, the bullet would take over 2 seconds to reach its target, meaning Reynolds had to predict exactly where Zakharov would be when the round arrived. He watched the Russian's movement pattern, identifying a recurring position where Zakharov briefly exposed himself while directing his men. Reynolds calculated lead distance, wind drift, and bullet drop. Then he waited for the perfect moment. "Echo team," Reynolds transmitted, his voice deadly calm. "I'm about to engage their command element. Prepare for disorganization in their ranks following my shot." Carter watched in amazement as a series of rapid, precisely timed shots echoed from the towering mountain peaks surrounding their position. The enemy retreat instantly transformed into complete chaos as their entire command structure was systematically eliminated with shots that seemed to defy the laws of physics and marksmanship. "Ghost 6, Carter transmitted, unable to keep the awe from his voice. "This is absolutely incredible precision shooting. What is your professional military background?" The voice that responded carried the weight of extensive combat experience and something that sounded like carefully controlled emotion. "Navy Special Warfare, multiple classified deployments. Ancient history now." Another lengthy pause filled with the sound of distant gunfire. "You can call me Reynolds." Carter froze. That name, it couldn't be. "Reynolds," he repeated. "William Reynolds." The radio remained silent for several long seconds. "Focus on the mission, Commander," came the eventual reply. "We've still got over 30 hostiles to neutralize before you're in the clear." Carter's mind raced. William Reynolds was a name he knew from childhood stories. His father's closest friend and teammate, a legendary SEAL sniper who had mysteriously retired after Jack Carter's death in 1991. The man who had occasionally appeared at family events during Carter's childhood and always watching from a distance, never staying long. The man who had sent anonymous care packages when Carter's mother struggled financially. Who had somehow arranged a recommendation for Carter's Naval Academy application when he was just 17. If this was the same Reynolds, he would be pushing 70 now. The idea that a man of that age could be executing some of the most difficult sniper shots Carter had ever witnessed seemed impossible. But special operators like William Reynolds defied normal limitations. "Reeves," Carter called out, "can you get any visual on our guardian angel up there?" The female sniper swept her scope across the ridgelines. "Negative, sir. Whoever he is, he's perfectly concealed. But based on shot acoustics and impact patterns, I'd estimate he's approximately 1,700 meters out at our 2 o'clock elevated position." Carter nodded. That range was nearly impossible for all but the most elite military snipers. If this really was William Reynolds, his skills had clearly not diminished with age. The hostile force was systematically collapsing. What had begun as a coordinated ambush by 52 well-trained professional fighters was ending as a desperate struggle for survival by fewer than 30 completely demoralized combatants. Reynolds continued his deadly work, each shot finding its mark with unerring precision. He was operating in a mental state few humans ever experience, a perfect flow of awareness, calculation, and execution. His breathing had synchronized with his heartbeat, each shot timed between cardiac pulses for maximum stability. Through his scope, Reynolds watched as Carter directed his team with growing confidence. The young commander was adapting to the changing battlefield dynamics, capitalizing on the enemy's disorganization to regain tactical initiative. Jack would have been proud. Reynolds spotted movement in the cave network along the western cliff face, a group of enemy fighters attempting to establish a fortified fallback position with interlocking fields of fire. He transmitted this information to Carter, who immediately redirected his team's suppressive fire to that location. What happened next demonstrated why Navy Special Warfare snipers are considered among the world's absolute elite precision marksmen. Reynolds engaged targets concealed inside cave openings, using precisely calculated ricochets off the limestone cave walls, utilizing the mountainous terrain to redirect his shots into positions that should have been completely impossible to engage with direct fire. "How in God's name are you making those impossible ricocheting shots?" Reeves asked over the tactical radio, her voice filled with professional amazement. "Advanced ballistics calculations, environmental physics, and 25 years of field experience," came the matter-of-fact response. Reynolds continued his methodical elimination of enemy positions, but he was beginning to feel the strain. At 68, despite his exceptional physical condition, the sustained precision shooting was taking its toll. His shoulder ached from the rifle's recoil, and maintaining perfect visual focus for this duration was becoming increasingly difficult. He reached for his canteen, taking a quick sip of water before returning to his scope. The tactical situation had dramatically shifted in favor of the SEAL team. What had appeared to be a hopeless last stand was rapidly becoming a methodical elimination of enemy forces. Through his radio, Reynolds could hear the growing confidence in the SEAL team's communications. They were regaining control of the battlefield, their superior training and discipline reasserting itself now that the overwhelming numerical advantage had been neutralized. But Reynolds knew they weren't safe yet. The remaining enemy fighters, though, reduced in number, were the most dangerous. The survivors, the adaptable ones, the fighters with the most skill and determination. His scope found a particularly concerning development. A group of 8 fighters had consolidated in a defensible position with good cover and clear fields of fire toward the SEAL team. These weren't panicking, they were reorganizing with professional discipline. Reynolds studied their equipment and positioning. These were different from the others. More disciplined, better equipped. Through his scope, he could make out distinctive tactical gear that he recognized from intelligence briefings during his final years of service. Private military contractors, likely former special forces from Eastern Europe. As he watched, one of them produced a satellite phone, attempting to call for reinforcements or extraction. Reynolds calculated distance, wind, and lead, 564 meters. The shot would need to pass through a narrow gap in the rock formation with less than 6 inches of clearance. At that distance, even a 1-degree error would result in a complete miss. He steadied his breathing, aligned the crosshairs, and squeezed the trigger with perfect pressure. The satellite phone exploded in the operator's hand. Carter watched in amazement as the enemy's last means of communication was destroyed by a shot that seemed physically impossible. "Reeves, did you see that? That gap couldn't have been more than 6 inches wide." Reeves herself, an accomplished sniper, shook her head in disbelief. "Sir, I wouldn't have attempted that shot at 300 meters, let alone 1,500. Whoever this Ghost 6 is, he's operating at a level I've never seen before." Carter keyed his radio again. "Ghost 6, this is Echo Actual. The tactical situation appears to be stabilizing. We've re-established defensive perimeters and regained fire superiority. Request your assessment of remaining threats." Reynolds' voice came back still professional, but with a hint of strain now evident. "Echo Actual, be advised. Remaining hostiles are consolidating in the southern section. They're preparing for a final coordinated assault. Recommend you concentrate your defensive firepower at that approach vector." Carter immediately redirected his team according to Reynolds' guidance. "All units focus fire south. Prepare for incoming assault. Make every shot count." Through his binoculars, Carter could see the remaining enemy fighters preparing for what appeared to be a last desperate charge. They had abandoned caution, obviously recognizing that their only chance was to overwhelm the SEAL position with a direct frontal assault. "Ghost 6, they're massing for a direct attack. Can you disrupt their formation?" There was a pause before Reynolds responded. "Negative, Echo Actual. They've positioned themselves in terrain, dead space that I cannot effectively engage from my current firing position. You're going to have to handle this final engagement independently." Carter nodded grimly. "Understood. Echo team, prepare for close quarters engagement. Fixed bayonets conserve ammunition for maximum effect. Fire only when you have guaranteed hits." And the SEALs prepared for the coming assault, checking their remaining ammunition and positioning themselves for optimal defensive coverage. Despite the odds still against them, the team's confidence had been restored by the mysterious sniper's intervention. Martinez crawled to Carter's position. "Sir, Ghost 6, could it really be William Reynolds, the William Reynolds?" Carter checked his weapon one last time. "I think it is, Doc. My father used to tell me stories about him, said he was the best shooter who ever wore the trident. But sir, he'd have to be close to 70 now, Carter finished. I know, hard to believe anyone that age could make the shots we've seen today. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. My grandfather always said the old wolves still have the sharpest teeth. Before Carter could respond, the radio crackled with Reynolds' voice. Echo Team, be advised. I've identified their assault leader. Former Spetsnaz commander name of Viktor Zakharov. He's an old acquaintance. Carter detected something in Reynolds' voice, a personal edge that hadn't been present before. You know this guy? There was a lengthy pause. He was involved in your father's death, Commander. Berlin, 1989. The official report was sanitized. Zakharov was KGB's top wet work specialist during the Cold War, later went private. He's the one who set up this ambush. This isn't random. This was a planned kill operation against your specific team. Carter felt ice in his veins. Why would a Russian operative from the Cold War target my team in 2018? That's a conversation for when you're safely extracted, Reynolds replied. For now, focus on survival. Zakharov's men are beginning their final approach. 30 seconds to contact. Carter relayed final instructions to his team, positioning them for maximum defensive effectiveness. As the enemy's final assault began, he couldn't help wondering what connection existed between his father's death nearly 30 years ago and today's ambush in the Appalachian wilderness. The last desperate assault erupted with suicidal intensity. The surviving enemy fighters charged across the valley floor in a final coordinated wave, firing continuously as they advanced, hoping to close the distance before the Americans could bring effective defensive fire to bear against their attack. It was precisely the type of close-quarters engagement that Navy SEALs train for constantly under the most realistic and demanding conditions possible. Carter and his men maintained fire discipline until the attackers closed to within 35 meters, then opened up with controlled, precisely aimed shots that dropped the first wave of charging combatants. The second wave continued their attack through the bodies of their fallen comrades. Reloading, Rodriguez shouted as his weapon ran completely empty, covering fire. Reeves immediately shifted her designated marksman rifle to protect him during his vulnerable reload period. The battle had become intensely personal, individual, and absolutely lethal. Each shot carried critical importance. Each second determined the difference between survival and death. Then Reynolds' authoritative voice cut through the combat chaos. Echo Team, drop flat immediately. Execute now. Carter didn't question the urgent command for even a microsecond. Everyone hit the deck immediately. The SEALs pressed themselves flat against the rocky valley floor as Reynolds' rifle cracked repeatedly from his elevated position. The remaining enemy fighters, caught completely exposed during their final desperate charge, were eliminated with shots that somehow threaded perfectly between the prone SEALs with accuracy that completely defied human capability. Then suddenly and possibly the entire hidden valley fell into complete silence. Carter raised his head with extreme caution. No movement visible anywhere. No muzzle flashes, no incoming fire of any type. Echo Team, sound off immediately. One by one, his men reported their status. Wounded, completely exhausted, ammunition critically depleted, but miraculously still alive. Ghost 6, this is Echo Actual. Tactical situation appears completely secure. What's your current operational status? Absolute radio silence. Ghost 6, respond immediately. Still nothing whatsoever. Carter grabbed his binoculars and systematically scanned the cliff faces where the precision sniper fire had been originating throughout the engagement. No sign of movement, no indication that anyone had ever been positioned there. Reeves, did you acquire any visual identification of our mysterious guardian? Negative contact throughout the entire engagement. Never saw him once, she replied, still scanning the ridgeline through her scope. But whoever he is, he just saved 12 American lives today. Carter stared at the silent ridgeline, a strange mixture of emotions washing over him. If that really was William Reynolds up there, his father's old teammate, the legendary sniper from another era, why had he appeared now? And why had he disappeared without making contact? Sir, Martinez called from nearby, holding up a small electronic device. I've been analyzing the tracker we found in our equipment. It's military-grade, American-made. Someone on our side compromised this mission. Carter's expression darkened. So this wasn't just bad intel. We were deliberately set up. Looks that way, sir. The implications were staggering. Someone with high-level military or intelligence clearance had deliberately sent them into an ambush. Someone had wanted SEAL Team Echo eliminated. Package everything for evidence, Carter ordered. When extraction arrives, we're taking this straight to naval intelligence. As if on cue, the distant sound of helicopter rotors echoed through the valley. Their emergency extraction was finally arriving nearly an hour after their initial distress call. Carter looked once more at the ridge where their mysterious savior had been positioned. Ghost 6, William Reynolds. Whoever you are, we owe you our lives. Only the mountain wind answered, whistling through the valley where 52 enemy combatants lay dead and 12 Navy SEALs had somehow survived what should have been a perfect ambush. The mystery of William Reynolds would have to wait for another day. The 3 Black Hawk helicopters landed in tight formation, kicking up swirls of dust and debris as Army Rangers poured out weapons ready, establishing a secure perimeter around the extraction zone. Carter watched them with professional appreciation, noting their disciplined movement and tactical positioning. But his mind remained fixed on the ridgeline, where their mysterious savior had vanished without a trace. Commander Carter, a tall Army captain approached, shouting over the helicopter rotors. Captain Wilson, 75th Ranger Regiment, we've been tasked with your extraction. What the hell happened out here? Carter gestured to the battlefield, scattered with enemy casualties. That's classified, Captain, but we need immediate medical evacuation for 2 of my men, and I need a secure line to naval intelligence as soon as we're airborne. Wilson nodded, his eyes sweeping across the valley with visible shock. I've never seen anything like this. Command said your team was surrounded and outnumbered. We were, Carter replied simply. The situation changed. As the Rangers helped load the wounded SEALs onto the helicopters, Carter pulled Reeves aside. Wolf, I need you to do something for me once we get back to base. She nodded. Name it, Commander. Find everything you can on William Reynolds. SEAL team operational history from the late 1980s through early 1990s. Anything connected to my father and operations in Berlin. Reeves' eyebrows raised slightly. You really think that was him? The shot grouping I observed would challenge Olympic-level shooters in their prime, let alone a man pushing 70, Carter finished her thought. I know, but that voice, there was something familiar about it, something I remember from childhood. Before boarding the helicopter, Carter took one final look at the battlefield. 52 enemy combatants eliminated with surgical precision, many from distances exceeding 1,500 meters. It was more than impressive marksmanship. It was nearly mythological. And somewhere out there, the shooter had simply vanished, like a ghost. Deep in the forest, Reynolds moved with methodical efficiency, breaking down his rifle and carefully packing his equipment. Despite his age, he traversed the difficult terrain with practiced skill, leaving minimal signs of his passage. Years of operating behind enemy lines had taught him how to disappear completely, a skill that had saved his life countless times. His shoulder throbbed where he'd been forced to absorb the rifle's punishing recoil for dozens of precision shots. At 68, his body reminded him that he wasn't the young operator he once had been, though his skills remained razor-sharp. He paused to swallow 2 ibuprofen tablets dry, then continued his extraction. Reynolds' mind replayed the engagement, analyzing each shot, each tactical decision. But more than the battle itself, he found himself thinking about James Carter. Jack's son had grown into a fine commander, demonstrating the same quick thinking and tactical awareness that had made his father legendary within the SEAL community. And now, for the first time in nearly 30 years, Viktor Zakharov had resurfaced. The coincidence was too significant to ignore. Reynolds reached a small clearing where an old Jeep Wrangler was carefully concealed under a camouflage tarp. As he loaded his equipment, he pulled out a satellite phone, one not registered to any government agency or traceable account, and dialed a number from memory. It's Reynolds, he said when the call connected. We need to activate the protocol. Zakharov is back and he's targeting Jack's son. The voice on the other end was gruff, aged like fine whiskey. Confirmed sighting, visual confirmation through my scope. He's older, but it's him. Had a team of at least 50 mercenaries well-equipped using modified Spetsnaz tactics. A lengthy pause. The others won't believe it without proof. Reynolds started the Jeep, navigating carefully through the forest on an unmarked trail. I've got shell casings with my DNA and fingerprints scattered across a ridge overlooking a valley full of dead mercenaries. Naval intelligence will be crawling all over that site within hours. That's all the proof they'll need that someone intervened. I need the Guardian team assembled. They're scattered across the country now. Some are in pretty rough shape. This isn't optional, Frank, Reynolds replied, his voice hardening. If Zakharov is back and targeting Jack's son, we all made a promise. Call Bear Snake and Doc. 24 hours my cabin. Reynolds ended the call, his mind already processing the implications. If Zakharov had orchestrated today's ambush, it meant the Russian had access to American military intelligence, operational planning, and deployment schedules. That level of infiltration suggested a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of command. The old Jeep bounced along the forest trail as Reynolds mentally prepared for a war he thought had ended with the fall of the Soviet Union. Some enemies, it seemed, never truly disappeared. They just waited for the right moment to strike again. 12 hours later, Carter sat in a secure briefing room at Fort Bragg facing a panel of stern-faced intelligence officers and military commanders. His team had been debriefed separately, their wounds treated, but the questions kept coming. "Let me understand this correctly, Commander," said Admiral Morrison, a gray-haired naval intelligence officer with cold, evaluating eyes. "You're stating that your team of 12 operators was ambushed by approximately 50 enemy combatants with superior tactical positioning, and yet you suffered 0 fatalities." "That's correct, sir," Carter replied, maintaining perfect military bearing, despite his exhaustion. "And you attribute this miraculous outcome to the intervention of a single unidentified sniper positioned at extreme distance who neutralized the majority of the hostile force." Carter met the Admiral's skeptical gaze directly. "Yes, sir, the shooter identified himself only as Ghost 6 over our tactical frequency. Based on voice recognition and tactical methodology, I believe the shooter may have been Master Sergeant William Reynolds, retired." Morrison exchanged glances with the other officers before leaning forward. "William Reynolds retired from active service nearly 25 years ago, Commander. He'd be approaching 70 now." "I'm aware of that, sir. And you believe a 70-year-old man executed what would be some of the most difficult precision shooting in recorded military history?" Carter didn't hesitate. "I believe William Reynolds was one of the finest snipers ever to serve in naval special warfare, sir. His documented shot records during Desert Storm still stand unbroken in some categories." Morrison's expression remained skeptical. "Even if what you're suggesting were remotely plausible, Commander, it raises disturbing questions about how a retired operator acquired intelligence about your mission, accessed your secure communications frequency, and happened to be in position with proper equipment to provide support." "Those are exactly the questions I've been asking myself, Admiral," Carter replied, "along with why we were sent into an obvious ambush with faulty intelligence and why no support assets were available within a reasonable response window." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Admiral Morrison's expression hardened. "Careful, Commander. That sounds dangerously close to implying this was more than an intelligence failure." Carter placed the small tracking device they discovered on the table. "This was planted in our communication equipment, sir. It's American-made military-grade technology. Someone deliberately compromised our mission and sent us into a kill zone." The intelligence officers examined the device with growing concern. "There's something else, sir," Carter continued. "The enemy commander was identified during the engagement as Viktor Zakharov, former Spetsnaz and KGB operative. According to Ghost 6, Zakharov was involved in my father's death in Berlin in 1989, though the official record states my father died in a training accident." Admiral Morrison's face became completely unreadable. "This briefing is now classified at the highest level. No one discusses what was said here without direct authorization from this command." He turned to his aide. "Clear the room of all non-essential personnel." As junior officers filed out, Morrison waited until the door closed before speaking again. "Commander Carter, what I'm about to tell you never happened. The operation your father was involved in never existed. Berlin 1989 was a critical period just before the fall of the wall. Certain operations were conducted that remain classified to this day." Carter leaned forward, his full attention on the Admiral. "Your father and William Reynolds were part of a specialized hunter-killer team targeting high-value Soviet assets during the final years of the Cold War. Their last mission involved an attempt to eliminate Viktor Zakharov, who was running a KGB assassination program targeting NATO intelligence officers. The mission was compromised. Your father didn't make it out. Reynolds was severely wounded but managed to extract with the remaining team members. Carter absorbed this revelation about his father's death, so different from the sanitized story he'd been told his entire life. If Zakharov is indeed alive and operating on U.S. soil, Morrison continued, it represents a significant national security threat. However, I find it difficult to believe that William Reynolds at his advanced age is still capable of the kind of operation you are describing. With all due respect, Admiral Carter replied, someone eliminated 52 hostile combatants and saved my entire team. Whether it was William Reynolds or someone else, that shooter is out there, and they have information critical to national security. Morrison studied Carter for a long moment before responding. Your team is on stand-down for 72 hours. Official report will cite an intelligence failure leading to an engagement with unidentified hostiles successfully repelled by SEAL Team Echo. There will be no mention of William Reynolds, Viktor Zakharov, or any connection to Cold War operations in the official documentation. Sir, if there's a conspiracy reaching into military command, Morrison cut him off sharply. You've made your report, Commander. Now follow orders and stand down. Dismissed. Carter came to attention, saluted crisply, and exited the briefing room, his mind racing with questions. The Admiral's reaction had confirmed his suspicions. There was far more to this situation than a simple intelligence failure. Someone high in the chain of command didn't want the connection between today's ambush and a 30-year-old Cold War operation exposed. Outside the briefing room, Reeves was waiting, her expression tense. How did it go? About as well as expected, Carter replied, keeping his voice low. They're burying it. No official acknowledgement of Reynolds or Zakharov. Reeves nodded, then handed him a sealed envelope. I did that research you asked for. Everything I could find on William Reynolds and your father. Most of it's redacted to hell, but there are some interesting patterns. Carter pocketed the envelope. Let's find somewhere private to talk. Reynolds' cabin was remote by design, accessible only by a single dirt road that wound through dense forest. The former SEAL had chosen this location carefully after retirement, isolated enough for privacy, but with excellent sight lines and multiple evacuation routes if needed. Inside, Reynolds methodically cleaned his rifle, his movements precise despite the dull ache in his shoulder. The wound where Zakharov's man had managed to hit him was superficial, and the bullet had grazed his upper arm, tearing through muscle but missing bone and major blood vessels. He treated it himself, the stitches neat and professional, a skill learned through decades of battlefield medicine. A vehicle approached, the sound of its engine breaking the forest silence. Reynolds calmly set aside his cleaning kit and reached for a compact M1911 .45 caliber handgun, positioning himself with a clear view of the front approach. The Jeep that pulled up was familiar, an older model with mud-spattered sides and a lift kit for off-road capability. The driver who emerged was a giant of a man, nearly 6.5 feet tall, with a thick gray beard and powerful shoulders that defied his 72 years. Frank Bear Johnson had been Reynolds' teammate in multiple operations throughout the 1980s, a heavy weapons specialist whose strength had been legendary within the teams. You look like hell, Ghost, Johnson called out as he approached the cabin. Still looking better than you, Bear, Reynolds replied, setting aside the pistol and stepping onto the porch. The two old warriors clasped forearms in the traditional greeting they'd used for decades. Shoulder, Johnson asked, noticing Reynolds' careful movement. Just a graze. Had worse shaving. Johnson nodded, following Reynolds inside. Snake and Doc are about 3 hours out. You really think it was Zakharov? Reynolds poured 2 glasses of bourbon, handing one to his old teammate. Saw him through my scope at 1,600 meters. Older, grayer, but it was him. Same scar across the left cheek where Jack tagged him in Berlin. Johnson took a thoughtful sip. After all these years, why now? And why target Jack's boy? That's what we need to figure out. Reynolds unfolded a map across the kitchen table. The operation today wasn't random. They knew exactly where SEAL Team Echo would be, had perfect defensive positions established, and were running a textbook ambush. That means they had access to mission parameters, deployment schedules, and operational planning. Inside job. Johnson nodded grimly. High level, Reynolds agreed. The kind of access that only comes from someone with significant clearance and authority. Johnson's weathered face darkened. Just like Berlin. The two men fell silent, both remembering the disastrous operation that had cost Jack Carter his life. Their team had been betrayed by someone inside American intelligence, their position compromised before they even reached the objective. Jack had sacrificed himself to ensure the rest of the team could escape staying behind to hold off Soviet special forces, while Reynolds, badly wounded, was dragged to the extraction point. "History's repeating," Reynolds said quietly, "and I'm not going to let Jack's son die the same way." Johnson studied his old teammate carefully. "You're not telling me everything, Ghost. What really happened out there today?" Reynolds took a long drink before answering. "I took the shot on Zakharov. 750 meters variable crosswind moving target. Should have been a clean kill." His expression hardened. "I missed Bear. First time in 30 years I missed a shot that mattered. Hit him in the shoulder instead of center mass. At that distance, with those conditions, don't make excuses for me." Reynolds cut him off. "The shot was there and I failed. Now Zakharov knows I'm still active and he knows I'm protecting Jack's son." Johnson considered this. "So what's our play?" Reynolds indicated various points on the map. "The mercenaries Zakharov brought in, they weren't just random contractors. They were using modified Spetsnaz tactics, had high-end equipment, and communicated using old KGB frequency hopping protocols. That suggests connection to Russian military intelligence or former Soviet bloc special operations units." "You think Moscow is running this operation?" Reynolds shook his head. "This feels too personal for state-sponsored action. I think Zakharov's gone private, but he's using his old connections and resources. The question is who he's working for now and why they want SEAL Team Echo eliminated." Before Johnson could respond, Reynolds' secure phone vibrated with an incoming message. He checked it, his expression grim. "We've got company coming. Naval Intelligence has deployed a field team to sweep this area. They're looking for evidence of our shooter from today's operation." Johnson raised an eyebrow. "How long?" 2 hours, maybe less. They're starting at the ridge position and working outward." The big man nodded immediately, shifting to operational mode. "I'll prepare the contingency package. You wipe this place down." The two former SEALs moved with practiced efficiency, eliminating any evidence that might connect Reynolds to the shooting. Fingerprints were wiped, shell casings, collected equipment, packed into hidden compartments. Within 20 minutes, the cabin appeared to be nothing more than a retired veteran's modest home, with no indication of its owner's recent activities. Bear, Reynolds said as they finished, "If they do connect me to this, I need you to get to Carter. Make contact, verify his security, and bring him into the fold if necessary. He needs to understand what he's up against." Johnson nodded solemnly. "Guardian protocol. We protect our own." In a secure room at Fort Bragg, Carter and his team reviewed the information Reeves had gathered about William Reynolds and Jack Carter. "Most of it's heavily redacted," Reeves explained, displaying documents on a secure terminal. "But I was able to piece together some interesting connections. Your father and Reynolds served together on multiple classified operations from 1984 to 1989, primarily in Eastern Europe during the final years of the Cold War." Martinez leaned forward, studying a partially redacted mission report. "These weren't standard SEAL operations. Look at the command structure: joint CIA and Naval Special Warfare Oversight, extreme operational security protocols, specialized equipment, requisitions." Carter nodded, recognizing the significance. "Black Ops, deniable operations behind the Iron Curtain." "Exactly," Reeves confirmed. "And here's where it gets interesting. The last documented operation involving both your father and Reynolds was in Berlin, November 1989, just days before the wall came down. The mission parameters are completely classified, but the after-action report notes that your father was killed in action and Reynolds was severely wounded." "So the training accident story was a cover," Carter said quietly. "My father died in Berlin on a black operation. And Reynolds survived," Rodriguez added. "But check this out. After recovering from his injuries, Reynolds' operational history gets weird. He continued serving, but almost exclusively on singleton missions, or with hastily assembled ad hoc teams. Then in '95, he abruptly retired with full honors." Carter studied the timeline carefully. "What happened after he retired?" Reeves shifted uncomfortably. "That's where the trail goes cold. He essentially disappeared from official records. No fixed address, no employment history, no digital footprint. It's like he became a ghost." "Or started operating as one," Carter murmured. "Ghost 6. The room fell silent as the team processed the implications. "There's one more thing," Reeves added hesitantly. "I found this in an archived Naval Intelligence Bulletin from 2002. She displayed a heavily redacted document with a security warning header. It references something called the Guardian Protocol, an unauthorized support network composed of retired special operators who occasionally appeared in conflict zones where American forces were in danger but couldn't receive official support." "Vigilante operators?" Rodriguez asked incredulously. "More like guardian angels," Martinez suggested. "Former teammates watching out for the next generation." Carter considered this, remembering the precision shooting that had saved his team. If Reynolds has been running some kind of unofficial backup operation for compromised American forces, it would explain how he knew about our mission and was in position to provide support. It would also explain why he disappeared without making official contact, Reeves added. "He's operating completely off the books." A sharp knock interrupted their discussion. The door opened to reveal Admiral Morrison, his expression severe. "Commander Carter, a word." Carter followed the Admiral into the hallway, closing the door behind him. "I thought I made myself clear about pursuing this matter," Morrison said, his voice low but intense. "With respect, Admiral, my team was nearly wiped out due to compromised intelligence. I have a responsibility to understand what happened." Morrison's eyes narrowed. "Your responsibility is to follow orders, Commander. Naval Intelligence is handling this investigation. Your team is on stand down." Carter stood his ground. "Sir, if there's a connection between today's ambush and my father's death in Berlin, I need to know about it." Something shifted in Morrison's expression, a momentary calculation, then a decision. "Walk with me, Commander." They moved through the facility to a small, secure courtyard where they could speak privately. "What I'm about to tell you is classified above your current clearance level," Morrison began. "In the late 1980s, a specialized hunter-killer team was assembled to target Soviet assassins operating in Western Europe. Your father and William Reynolds were part of that team. Their final mission was to eliminate Viktor Zakharov, a KGB wet work specialist responsible for numerous deaths of NATO intelligence officers." Carter listened intently, finally hearing the truth about his father's last mission. "The operation was betrayed from within," Morrison continued. "Soviet counterintelligence was waiting for them. Your father sacrificed himself to allow the rest of the team to escape. Reynolds was severely wounded but made it out with the others." "Who betrayed them?" Carter asked. Morrison's expression hardened. "That was never conclusively determined. Investigations pointed to a high-level mole within naval intelligence or the CIA, but no one was ever charged. And Zakharov, presumed dead until recently. We've had multiple intelligence reports over the past 6 months suggesting he may be operational again, working as a contractor for various non-state entities." Carter processed this information, connecting it to the day's events. "So if Zakharov orchestrated today's ambush and Reynolds intervened, this could be the continuation of an operation that began 30 years ago." Morrison nodded grimly. "Which is precisely why I ordered you to stand down. If Zakharov is targeting you because of your connection to your father, and Reynolds is protecting you for the same reason, you're in the middle of a personal vendetta that stretches back to the Cold War. That makes you a liability, not an asset. With respect, Admiral, that makes me and my team the perfect bait to draw out both Zakharov and Reynolds." Morrison studied Carter with newfound interest. "You're proposing we use you as deliberate counterintelligence assets. I'm proposing we use this situation to identify who in the chain of command compromised my team's mission. Someone provided Zakharov with our operational details. That same someone is likely connected to whoever betrayed my father's team in Berlin." The Admiral considered this strategy. "It's risky. If Zakharov is as good as his reputation, he won't be easily trapped. And if Reynolds is still half the operator he was 30 years ago, he'll be watching my team regardless of official orders," Carter countered. "We have 2 legendary ghosts from the Cold War circling each other, both focused on my team. Let's use that to our advantage." Morrison's expression remained carefully neutral, but Carter sensed he was considering the proposal. "I'll take it under advisement, Commander. In the meantime, maintain your stand-down status." "That's an order." Carter came to attention. "Yes, sir." As Morrison walked away, Carter couldn't shake the feeling that the Admiral knew far more than he was revealing. Whether Morrison was an ally or potentially part of the conspiracy remained unclear. But one thing was certain: the truth about his father's death and today's ambush were connected by threads that stretched back 3 decades. And somewhere out there, William Reynolds was still watching. Reynolds observed the naval intelligence team sweeping the ridge position through high-powered binoculars. From his concealed observation post 2 miles away, he could see their methodical search pattern as they collected evidence from where he had set up his shooting position hours earlier. "They're being thorough," Johnson commented, scanning with his own optics. "Found your brass already?" Reynolds nodded. "Expected that. Those casings have DNA from an officially retired master sergeant who hasn't handled a military rifle in over 20 years. It'll confuse them for a while." The two veteran operators watched silently as the search team expanded their investigation, documenting the battlefield below with cameras and collection equipment. "They're taking this seriously," Johnson observed. "That's not a standard evidence collection team. Those are counterintelligence specialists." Reynolds lowered his binoculars, his expression thoughtful. "Someone high up is very interested in identifying the shooter who intervened today. That suggests our mole is getting nervous. Or preparing to tie up loose ends," Johnson added grimly. "If Zakharov failed to eliminate Team Echo, whoever sent them into that ambush will be looking to cover their tracks." Reynolds checked his watch. "Snake and Doc should be arriving at the secondary location soon. We need to move." As they prepared to withdraw, Reynolds' satellite phone vibrated with an incoming message. The text was brief but concerning. "Guardian compromise. Switch to Protocol Delta." Johnson read the message over Reynolds' shoulder. "That's not good. Protocol Delta is complete communications blackout." Reynolds nodded grimly. "Someone's hunting our network. We need to warn the others and go dark." As they moved through the forest with the practiced stealth of veteran operators, Reynolds considered the implications. Protocol Delta had been established for worst-case scenarios, situations where the Guardian network itself had been compromised. That it had been activated now suggested the conspiracy reached far deeper than he had initially suspected. "Think they traced your comms during the operation?" Johnson asked quietly as they navigated a rocky slope. "Possible," Reynolds acknowledged. "I maintained transmission discipline, but I was on their tactical frequency for extended periods. A good signals intelligence team might have triangulated my position." "Or we've got another leak," Johnson suggested. "Someone who knows about the Guardian protocol." Reynolds' expression darkened at the possibility. The Guardian protocol was known to only a handful of retired operators' men who had served together in the most classified operations of the Cold War era. If one of them had been compromised, it would represent a devastating breach of trust. They reached their concealed vehicle and departed the area using Forest Service roads that avoided main thoroughfares. Reynolds drove while Johnson monitored communications, both men alert for signs of pursuit or surveillance. "We need to make contact with Carter," Reynolds said after several miles of silence. "If naval intelligence is this interested in identifying me, they're either trying to protect him or setting him up." Johnson nodded in agreement. "The question is how. If Protocol Delta is active, we can't risk electronic communication or direct approach." Reynolds considered their options. "There's another way. Jack and I established a contingency protocol for his family if anything happened to him. Emergency recognition signals that would identify friendly contacts to his wife and son. Carter might remember the protocol even after all these years." "That's assuming he was ever told about it," Johnson pointed out, "and assuming he'd recognize it after 30 years. "It's the only secure option we have," Reynolds replied. "The rest of the team will meet us at the fallback position. From there, we implement the contact protocol and determine if Carter is an asset or a potential liability." Johnson studied his old teammate's profile. "You've been watching over him all these years, haven't you, Jack's boy?" Reynolds kept his eyes on the winding forest road. "I made a promise to his father." "And Zakharov, you've been hunting him too." Reynolds' grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I thought he died in Grozny in 1996. Military intelligence reported he'd been killed during the Chechen conflict. When I spotted him today through my scope, it was like seeing a ghost." "A ghost with a 30-year grudge," Johnson observed, "and apparently high-level access to American military intelligence." Reynolds nodded grimly. "Which means we trust no one outside the Guardian team. Not until we identify the mole who compromised both Operations Berlin then and the Appalachians today." As they drove deeper into the gathering dusk, Reynolds couldn't shake the feeling that history was repeating itself in the worst possible way. 30 years ago, a betrayal had cost Jack Carter his life. Now the same forces seemed to be aligning against Jack's son. The wheel had turned full circle, bringing old enemies and unfinished business back into deadly alignment. In the secure medical facility at Fort Bragg, Carter visited his wounded teammates. Petty Officer Jackson's leg wound was serious, but not life-threatening. He'd be transferred to Walter Reed for specialized surgery tomorrow. The rest of the team had suffered minor injuries, shrapnel wounds, contusions, one mild concussion, but all would recover fully. "Any news on our guardian angel, Commander?" Jackson asked from his hospital bed. Carter shook his head. "Nothing official. Naval intelligence is investigating, but they're keeping everything compartmentalized." Martinez, seated nearby with his arm in a sling, lowered his voice. "Scuttlebutt says they found brass casings at the sniper's position. 338 Lapua Magnum match-grade ammunition. Hand-loaded," Reeves added, joining the conversation. "Custom loads, not standard military issue. Whoever our shooter was, he's serious about his craft." Carter wasn't surprised. William Reynolds had been famous within the sniper community for his custom ammunition, hand-loaded rounds tailored to his specific rifle and environmental conditions. It was one of the factors that had made him legendarily accurate at extreme distances. "Listen up," Carter addressed his team quietly. "Admiral Morrison has ordered us to stand down and let naval intelligence handle the investigation." Officially, that's exactly what we're going to do. His teammates exchanged knowing glances, recognizing the emphasis on officially. "Unofficially," Carter continued, "I believe someone high in the chain of command compromised our mission and deliberately sent us into an ambush. I also believe that William Reynolds, a former teammate of my father's, intervened to save us potentially as part of an unofficial support network of retired operators." Rodriguez leaned forward. "The Guardian protocol that Reeves found referenced in those old files?" Carter nodded. "Exactly. If such a network exists, and if Reynolds is part of it, he may attempt to make contact with us. Everyone needs to be alert for unusual approaches or communication attempts, particularly those using old-school tradecraft rather than modern technology." "You think he'll reach out directly?" Martinez asked. "I think he'll be cautious," Carter replied. "If he's been operating off books for years, he'll have established secure contact protocols. The challenge for us is recognizing them if and when they appear." The team discussed potential scenarios and recognition signals, drawing on their training in clandestine operations and counterintelligence. Each operator would maintain normal routines, but remain vigilant for contact attempts. As the discussion concluded, Carter noticed a nurse entering with medication for Jackson. Something about her movement pattern triggered his operational instincts, the practiced efficiency of someone with tactical training trying to appear civilian. "Keep your eyes open," he told his team quietly. "We may be under surveillance even here." Carter left the medical facility, deliberately taking an indirect route back to his temporary quarters. Twice he executed casual but effective counter-surveillance maneuvers, confirming his suspicion that he was being followed by at least two separate individuals, professionals, using textbook shadowing techniques. In his quarters, he performed a thorough sweep for listening devices, finding two conventional bugs and one advanced transmitter concealed within his standard-issue laptop. Rather than removing them, he left them in place, now aware of what channels were compromised. Carter sat on his bunk, reviewing the sparse documentation Reeves had assembled about his father's final mission and William Reynolds' subsequent career. Most critical details were redacted, but patterns emerged when viewed as a comprehensive timeline. After Berlin, Reynolds had operated almost exclusively on high-risk, deniable missions behind enemy lines. His specialty had shifted from direct action to what appeared to be rescue operations, extracting compromised agents or military personnel from untenable situations. Then, following his retirement in 1995, Reynolds had vanished from official records. But there were whispers, unofficial accounts buried in after-action reports where outnumbered American forces in desperate situations had mysteriously received critical support from unidentified operators. Somalia in 1993, Bosnia in 1995, Afghanistan in 2001, Iraq in 2004. In each case, the interventions had been precise, professional, and completely deniable, with the operators vanishing without recognition or trace once the immediate danger had passed. The Guardian Protocol appeared to be more than myth, a shadow network of veteran operators who appeared when official support failed, then disappeared back into anonymity. As Carter contemplated this possibility, his attention was drawn to a small anomaly in his room, a folded page torn from a novel placed unobtrusively near the air vent. He hadn't noticed it during his initial sweep, which meant it had been placed with exceptional skill by someone who had accessed his quarters while he was visiting his team. Carter retrieved the paper, carefully noting it was a page from For Whom the Bell Tolls, Ernest Hemingway's novel about guerrilla fighters in the Spanish Civil War. A passage was underlined in faint pencil. "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for, and I hate very much to leave it." Below the quote was a sequence of numbers that appeared random to casual inspection, but Carter immediately recognized the format, GPS coordinates, followed by a time code in military format. And below that, a simple symbol he hadn't seen since childhood, two crossed arrows with a trident superimposed the unofficial emblem his father had sometimes drawn on letters home during deployments. Carter's pulse quickened. This was contact from Reynolds using a recognition protocol established decades ago between his father and the veteran sniper. The Hemingway quote had been one of his father's favorites, often quoted in family settings. The coordinates indicated a meeting location, and the time code specified tomorrow at dawn. The message was clear: William Reynolds wanted to meet, and he was using protocols only someone with intimate knowledge of Jack Carter's personal life would know. But there was risk in responding. If Reynolds had indeed been operating an unauthorized support network for decades, making contact with him could be interpreted as conspiracy against the chain of command. Yet if Reynolds possessed information about who had betrayed Carter's team, and potentially who had betrayed his father's team 30 years earlier, the risk was necessary. Carter committed the coordinates to memory, then carefully burned the paper page, disposing of the ashes in the toilet. Tomorrow at dawn, he would meet the man who had saved his team and who might hold the answers about his father's death. But first, he needed to ensure he wasn't followed. First light hadn't yet broken over the eastern horizon when Carter arrived at the coordinates. The location was strategic, a small clearing in the forest approximately 20 miles from Fort Bragg, accessible only by foot through difficult terrain that would reveal any attempt at surveillance or pursuit. Carter had employed every counter-tracking technique in his considerable arsenal to ensure he hadn't been followed, doubling back multiple times, crossing a shallow stream to break his trail, and even changing clothes in a concealed location to alter his visual signature. The clearing itself offered excellent defensive characteristics: multiple escape routes, good visibility in all directions, and natural cover that could provide protection if the meeting went sideways. It was the kind of location a veteran special operator would choose: easily defensible, difficult to approach undetected. Carter positioned himself at the edge of the clearing rather than in its center, his back to a large oak tree, giving himself both cover and a clear view of all potential approach vectors. Though technically on stand-down status, he had discreetly armed himself with his personal sidearm, a compact 9mm carried in a concealed holster. The forest was eerily silent in the pre-dawn stillness, not even birdsong disturbing the heavy quiet that hung between the trees. Carter controlled his breathing, maintaining situational awareness while he waited, his senses heightened to detect any movement or disturbance in the natural environment around him. "You move well for a younger man," came a quiet voice directly behind him. Carter froze. Despite his vigilance, someone had managed to approach within speaking distance without triggering any of his perimeter awareness. He started to turn slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Stay facing forward," the voice instructed. "First check for surveillance drones. Thermal imaging capabilities have improved significantly in recent years." Carter carefully scanned the sky, noting the voice's professional assessment. "No visible aerial surveillance. I took extensive precautions against being followed." "So did the team in Berlin, 1989, the voice replied. "Precautions aren't always enough when the compromise comes from within." Now Carter was certain this was William Reynolds. The reference to Berlin confirmed it. "Are you alone?" he asked quietly. "Never completely," Reynolds answered. "Guardian protocol means overlapping security elements. My team has established a perimeter." Carter nodded, understanding the tactical approach. It was standard procedure for high-risk meetings in potentially compromised territory, multiple layers of security, with teammates positioned to observe and intervene if necessary. "May I turn around now?" Carter asked. "You may." Carter turned slowly to find himself facing a lean, weathered man in his late 60s, dressed in nondescript outdoor clothing that would blend seamlessly into the forest environment. Despite his age, William Reynolds carried himself with the unmistakable bearing of a career operator, balanced, alert, economical in movement. His face was lined with experience, but his eyes remained sharp and evaluative, missing nothing as they assessed Carter with professional precision. "You look like your father," Reynolds said simply. Carter studied the older man with equal intensity. "You saved my team." "Why?" Reynolds gestured toward a fallen log nearby. "Let's sit. Dawn patrol drones will be running their programmed search patterns soon. Tree canopy provides better concealment." They moved to the log, both positioning themselves with clear sight lines to potential approach routes, a habit ingrained through years of operational experience. "I made a promise to your father." Reynolds began, his voice quiet but clear. "Berlin, 1989. Jack was bleeding out from multiple gunshot wounds. Soviet special forces were closing in. He ordered the rest of us to extract while he held them off." The older man's eyes took on a distant look, revisiting a moment 3 decades past. "His last words to me were about you. Look after my boy Will. Promise me." Carter absorbed this emotions warring beneath his professional exterior. The father he remembered had been a larger-than-life figure, always somewhat distant due to constant deployments, but unfailingly warm during his brief periods at home. The official story of his death, a training accident, had always felt sanitized even to a child. "You've been watching over me all these years." Reynolds nodded. "From a distance, mostly. College recommendation letters. That scholarship committee that mysteriously decided in your favor. The Naval Academy application that received special consideration. Small course corrections at critical junctures." His expression remained neutral, professional. "Your achievements are your own commander. I merely removed certain obstacles." Carter processed this revelation. "And yesterday in the valley, when I intercepted communications about SEAL Team Echo walking into an ambush, I recognized your name in the command roster." Reynolds' eyes narrowed slightly. "The tactical situation you encountered wasn't random. It was a professionally executed kill box designed specifically for your team." "Orchestrated by Viktor Zakharov," Carter stated. Reynolds' expression hardened. "You've been briefed." "Partially. Admiral Morrison provided limited information about my father's final mission and Zakharov's involvement." Reynolds considered this with visible caution. "Morrison, interesting that he'd be the one to brief you. He was junior intelligence liaison on several Eastern European operations during that period." Carter noted the subtle emphasis. "He claims Zakharov was presumed dead until recently." A grim smile touched Reynolds' lips. "Intelligence agencies have pronounced Zakharov dead at least 3 times over the past 30 years. He's remarkably resilient for a ghost." "You recognized him during the engagement." Reynolds nodded. "Through my scope at 1/600 meters. He's older, but the scar along his left cheekbone is distinctive. Your father gave him that with a knife during a close-quarters engagement in Prague, 1988. Carter leaned forward slightly. "You attempted to eliminate him." "And missed." Reynolds' admission carried the weight of professional disappointment. 750 meters variable crosswind, moving target. Hit him in the shoulder instead of center mass. He'll survive." "Why would Zakharov target my team after all these years? What's the connection to my father's operation in Berlin?" Reynolds weighed his response carefully. "Your current mission parameters were nearly identical to our Berlin operation, remote reconnaissance of suspected hostile training facility with minimal support. Both missions were compromised by someone with high-level access to operational planning." And the implication was clear. "You believe the same person who betrayed your team in Berlin betrayed mine in the Appalachians, or their operational successor." Reynolds nodded. "If Zakharov is operating with the inside information about current SEAL deployments, it suggests his old network is still active within your chain of command." A subtle bird call sounded from the forest to their left, distinctive and clearly artificial. Reynolds didn't visibly react, but Carter noted his momentary focus shift. "One of yours?" Carter asked quietly. Reynolds nodded. "Perimeter signal. All clear for now." He returned his attention to Carter. "We don't have much time. Dawn approach in approximately 20 minutes. Thermal imaging drones from Fort Bragg regularly sweep this area starting at first light." "What's our next move?" Carter asked, implicitly accepting the partnership. "Your team is under surveillance. All electronic communications are compromised. Trust no one in your official chain of command until we identify the source of the compromise." Another bird call sounded, this one more urgent. Reynolds stood immediately. We need to move. Surveillance detected approaching from the southwest. Extraction plan, Carter asked, shifting to operational mode. Split and divert. Two separate exfiltration routes, rendezvous at secondary location. Reynolds handed him a small folded piece of paper. Memorize and destroy. No electronic devices. Arrival window between 1400 and 1600 hours today. As they prepared to separate, Reynolds fixed Carter with an intense gaze. Your father would be proud of the operator you've become. Remember his most important lesson. Trust your instincts, but verify everything. Carter completed the familiar saying. Reynolds nodded, a ghost of a smile crossing his weathered features. See you at the rendezvous, Commander. With that, he melted into the forest with silent efficiency, leaving no trace of his passing. The abandoned ranger station stood on elevated ground with excellent visibility in all directions. Carter approached with extreme caution, identifying multiple observation posts manned by individuals demonstrating professional surveillance techniques. Using hand signals, Carter indicated his approach vector to the nearest observer. The acknowledgement came back immediately, a subtle gesture confirming he had been recognized and cleared to proceed. Before he could announce his presence, the door opened. Reynolds stood in the entrance, his posture relaxed but alert. Clean approach, the older man noted with approval. Reynolds gestured him inside. The team's assembled. Time to meet the Guardians. Carter entered to find three men who, despite their age, carried themselves with the unmistakable bearing of career special operators. Reynolds made the introductions concisely. Frank Johnson, heavy weapons and demolitions. Richard Williams, reconnaissance and intelligence. Michael Thompson, combat medicine. We served with your father throughout the 1980s. Gentlemen, Carter greeted them respectfully. Thank you for saving my team. Johnson, a massive bear of a man, despite his 70-plus years, spoke first. Your father would have done the same for any of our sons. Williams remained skeptical. Is he with us or gathering intelligence for his chain of command? He's questioning his command structure, Reynolds replied. The ambush and subsequent stand-down orders have triggered appropriate suspicion. Carter's mind raced through the possibilities. Admiral Morrison briefed me personally about the Berlin connection after I mentioned Zakharov and Reynolds. He claimed the investigation into who betrayed your team was inconclusive. Reynolds' eyes narrowed slightly. Morrison was junior intelligence liaison on several Eastern European operations during that period. He had access to operational details for Berlin, though not primary planning authority. Could he be the mole? Carter asked directly. Unknown, Reynolds replied. Our investigation was shut down before we could identify the source definitively. But Morrison's career advancement following Berlin was notably accelerated. The room fell silent as Carter processed this possibility that an admiral who had personally briefed him might be connected to the conspiracy that had killed his father and nearly killed his team. As they studied the tactical map, a sudden alert from Williams's monitoring equipment interrupted their planning. Movement on the north approach, he reported tersely. Vehicle approaching non-standard pattern. The veterans shifted seamlessly to defensive positions, retrieving weapons with practiced efficiency. Carter was impressed by their smooth coordination, muscle memory, and decades of operational experience compensating for diminished physical capabilities. Carter observation post 2, Reynolds directed, indicating a window position. Williams verify vehicle description and occupants. Through binoculars, Carter observed a black SUV approaching on the forest access road, its movement pattern suggesting tactical driving rather than civilian transportation. Government vehicle, he reported. Blacked out windows, reinforced chassis, matches naval intelligence tactical deployment vehicles. The SUV stopped approximately 200 meters from the ranger station, maintaining position just within visual range, but outside effective small arms engagement distance. As they prepared for potential evacuation, the situation evolved unexpectedly. The SUV's driver's door opened, and a single figure emerged, a woman in standard naval intelligence tactical attire, her movements precise and professional as she surveyed the ranger station through binoculars. Carter stiffened in recognition. Major Reeves, he identified quietly. Your team's sniper, Reynolds noted. How would she have located this position? Non-standard approach, Carter confirmed after observing her movements. She's operating independently, not following tactical protocols for high-value target acquisition. Reynolds considered this assessment. Limited contact protocol, Carter establishes initial communication from cover position. We maintain defensive overwatch with contingency extraction readiness. Using hand signals familiar to special operations teams, Carter directed Reeves toward a clearing approximately 100 meters from the ranger station. Reeves acknowledged the signals with professional precision. Once there, she deliberately placed her sidearm on the ground and stepped back, indicating non-hostile intent. "Cover me," Carter told Reynolds. "If this goes sideways, don't hesitate." The veteran sniper nodded grimly, shifting to a firing position with clear sight lines to the meeting location. Carter approached the clearing cautiously. Commander Reeves greeted him formally. "You're a difficult man to locate when you want to disappear." "That was the intention, Major," Carter replied neutrally. "The question is why you were looking for me and how you found this location." "After you disappeared this morning, Admiral Morrison ordered a full tactical search. He's classified you as AWOL and potentially compromised. Naval intelligence teams are sweeping a 20-mile radius from Fort Bragg with drone support and ground teams. And yet you're here alone without tactical support." "Why?" Reeves hesitated, then committed to her decision. "Because I discovered additional information suggesting Admiral Morrison may be connected to the compromise that nearly killed our team yesterday." Carter maintained his neutral expression, but internally his suspicions crystallized into certainty. "What evidence?" "After our briefing, I continued investigating archived records about the Berlin operation. Most information remains redacted, but I discovered a pattern of personnel reassignments following your father's death. Every surviving member of that mission was transferred to separate commands within weeks. Every investigating officer was promoted and reassigned. Standard procedure for containing classified Operation Fallout," Carter noted. "Except for one anomaly," Reeves continued. "Then Lieutenant Morrison received an unprecedented 2-rank promotion and transferred directly to Naval Intelligence Headquarters. His career acceleration following Berlin was statistical anomaly. You believe Morrison was connected to the compromise. I believe it's a statistical improbability that the only significant career advancement following a disastrous operation would go to the intelligence officer responsible for mission security," Reeves replied carefully. "And I find it highly suspicious that the same officer is now directing the suppression of investigation into our ambush yesterday." From the tree line, Reynolds' voice carried clearly. "You're welcome, Major Reeves." The veteran sniper emerged partially from cover, maintaining tactical positioning but allowing himself to be identified. Reeves studied him with professional respect. "Master Sergeant Reynolds, your shot grouping yesterday was the most impressive precision marksmanship I've ever witnessed." "There was one miss," Reynolds corrected, his expression momentarily hardening. "Zakharov won 750 meters, hit shoulder instead of center mass." "What are your intentions, Major?" Reynolds asked, focusing on the tactical situation. Reeves straightened to military attention. "To offer my assistance in identifying who compromised our mission and sent 12 SEALs into an ambush. And to help expose whoever has been protecting that conspiracy for 30 years, sir." E.P. Reynolds exchanged a meaningful glance with Carter, both men assessing Reeves's sincerity. After a moment, Carter nodded slightly, indicating his trust in his team member. "The ranger station in 2 minutes," Reynolds instructed. "Leave your communications equipment and any potential tracking devices with your vehicle." As Reeves joined them, the expanded team retreated to the ranger station to continue operational planning. Back at the ranger station, Reynolds unfolded detailed maps of a secure medical facility 60 miles northeast of their position. "Based on signal intelligence and human sources, Zakharov is recovering here." Reynolds indicated the facility. "Minimal security, primarily medical staff, and a small tactical team of 6 to 8 operators." "What's our play?" Johnson asked, studying the satellite imagery. "3-phase operation," Reynolds replied. "First, we locate and capture Zakharov for intelligence extraction. Second, secure digital evidence connecting Morrison to the conspiracy. Third, deliver everything to secure channels within naval intelligence who are not compromised." Reeves examined the facility layout. "Security systems, standard commercial setup with military upgrades," Williams reported. "Remote monitoring motion sensors, cellular signal jammers, and redundant power systems." "Bypass options," Carter asked. "The facility's systems connect to an external monitoring station," Williams explained. "If we can access their network remotely, we can create a security blind spot." "I can handle that," Reeves offered. "My specialization includes electronic countermeasures." Reynolds nodded. Good. Carter, you and Reeves will handle the electronic intrusion. Johnson, Thompson, and I will establish overwatch positions. Williams will coordinate communications and extraction support. As they finalized tactical details, Thompson's monitoring equipment detected an encrypted transmission. Intercept from Fort Bragg, he reported. Multiple tactical teams being deployed to our area. Morrison's moving faster than anticipated, Reynolds observed. We need to accelerate our timeline. How? Carter asked. We're understaffed, under-equipped, and now under active pursuit. We do what we've always done, Reynolds replied with quiet confidence. We adapt, we improvise, and we remember what we're fighting for. The 5 veterans and 2 active operators moved with practiced efficiency, preparing equipment, checking weapons, and reviewing tactical approaches. Despite the age difference, there was a seamless integration of capabilities, the younger operator's physical prime complementing the veteran's decades of experience. One more thing, Reynolds said as they prepared to move out. If this goes sideways and you're captured, Morrison will ensure you're never given a public hearing. The Guardian protocol includes contingency measures for such scenarios. He handed Carter a small encrypted flash drive. This contains everything we've gathered over 30 years, evidence of the Berlin Compromise, subsequent operations, and Morrison's connections to Zakharov. If we don't make it get this to Naval Intelligence Inspector General Hughes, he's clean. Carter secured the drive in an internal pocket. We'll make it. Reynolds nodded, a ghost of a smile crossing his weathered features. Your father said the same thing in Berlin. The medical facility stood in a clearing surrounded by dense forest, its modern architecture contrasting with the natural environment. Under the cover of night, the team approached from multiple vectors utilizing the terrain for concealment. Reeves and Carter established a position within signal range of the facility's security system. Using specialized equipment, Reeves began the electronic intrusion. Their system uses a rotating encryption algorithm, she reported quietly. Military grade, but an older generation I recognize from counterintelligence training. Carter watched as her fingers moved across the specialized keyboard with practiced precision. Timeline, 3 minutes to access, another 2 to create our window. Reynolds and Johnson had established overwatch positions with clear sight lines to the facility's main entrance and emergency exits. Thompson remained at their mobile command center coordinating communications while Williams handled perimeter security. This is Ghost 6, Reynolds' voice came through their secure communications system. Target confirmed, East Wing, 2nd floor, room 204. 2 guards at door, medical staff entering and exiting at 15-minute intervals. Electronic surveillance active in room, Reeves added, now inside the facility's security network. I can loop the feed, but only for 7 minutes before their redundant systems detect the intrusion. That's our window, Carter confirmed. On your mark, Reeves. Reeves initiated the security bypass sequence. Systems compromised. 7-minute countdown initiated now. Carter and Reynolds moved simultaneously from different directions using the facility's blind spots to approach undetected. The 2 guards at Zakharov's door never saw the threat coming. Reynolds applied a sleeper hold to one, while Carter subdued the other with a precision strike to the vagus nerve. Both men were unconscious within seconds, their weapons secured without a sound. Room 204 was dimly lit medical equipment, humming softly. Zakharov lay in a hospital bed, his shoulder heavily bandaged, an IV drip delivering medication that kept him sedated but conscious. His eyes widened slightly as he registered the intruders. William Reynolds. Zakharov spoke, his Russian accent still pronounced despite decades in the West. You look older than I expected. And you're exactly as I remember, Reynolds replied coldly, securing the door behind them. Except for that scar, Jack Carter's work still looks good after 30 years. Carter approached the bed, his weapon trained on Zakharov. Viktor Zakharov, former KGB, now private contractor. You ordered the ambush on my team. Zakharov's eyes shifted to Carter, studying him with clinical detachment. The son of Jack Carter, I see the resemblance. A thin smile spread across his face. How does it feel to follow your father to the same end? The difference is I'm still breathing, Carter replied evenly. And you're going to tell us everything about your operation with Admiral Morrison. Zakharov's expression revealed nothing, but his heart monitor betrayed a momentary acceleration. I don't know what you're talking about. Reynolds approached the bed, his weathered face hard with 3 decades of accumulated determination. We intercepted your communication with Morrison yesterday. We know he ordered the elimination of SEAL Team Echo to prevent them from discovering whatever you're hiding in those mountains. 4 minutes remaining, Reeves' voice came through their comms. Carter leaned closer to Zakharov. We can do this two ways. You cooperate and maybe avoid spending the rest of your life in a black site, or we take you with us and extract the information through less comfortable means. For a long moment, Zakharov measured his options, his cold eyes calculating survival probabilities. Morrison was never the mastermind, he finally said. He was just a convenient asset recruited during his first posting to Berlin in '87, a young intelligence officer with ambition exceeding his principles. What's in the Appalachians? Carter pressed. What were we getting close to finding? A transfer point, Zakharov replied, one of several established during the Cold War. Data exchange facilities disguised as environmental monitoring stations. When the Soviet Union collapsed, some of us repurposed these networks. For what? Reynolds demanded. The modern battlefield isn't territorial, it's informational, Zakharov explained with professional detachment. Financial data, military communications, intelligence operations, all flowing through these shadow networks invisible to conventional monitoring systems. Your team is getting too close to one of our primary nodes. 2 minutes, Reeves warned through comms. Carter processed this revelation. Morrison compromised my father's team in Berlin because they discovered this network, and he tried to eliminate my team for the same reason. Morrison is merely one node in a much larger system, Zakharov said, a note of professional pride entering his voice. You cannot dismantle a network by removing a single connection. Reynolds checked his watch. We're out of time. We need to move. Carter quickly administered a sedative from his tactical medical kit. This will keep him quiet during transport. Wait, Zakharov said as the sedative began taking effect. Morrison isn't your biggest problem. The network has evolved beyond national loyalties. It serves whoever pays the highest price. His eyes began to close as the drug took effect. The real controller is someone you haven't even considered. Before he could finish, the facility's alarms activated, lights flashing as security protocols engaged. Reeves' status, Carter demanded through comms. Security countermeasures activated prematurely, she reported, her voice tense. They have better redundancies than expected. Tactical teams converging on your position from the west entrance. Reynolds moved to the door, checking the corridor. Extraction route compromised. We need alternatives. East Service Corridor. Williams' voice came through comms. Maintenance access to the roof. Extraction team standing by for rooftop pickup in 2 minutes. Carter secured the unconscious Zakharov, lifting him in a fireman's carry. Let's move. As they entered the corridor, gunfire erupted from the direction of the west entrance. Reynolds returned fire with precision, creating cover for Carter's movement. This is Ghost 6, Reynolds transmitted. We have primary target secured. Moving to extraction point Echo. Need immediate suppressive fire on west approach. Johnson's voice came through their comms. Copy that, Ghost. Support inbound. Seconds later, precision shots from Johnson's position eliminated the security team's tactical lights, plunging the corridor into darkness. Using night vision equipment, Reynolds and Carter navigated through the confusion, making their way toward the East Service Corridor. 60 seconds to extraction, Williams updated. They reached the maintenance access, Reynolds securing their rear, while Carter maneuvered Zakharov's unconscious form up the narrow service ladder. As they emerged onto the roof, the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors cut through the night, a black shape appearing against the star-filled sky. Guardians, this is Archangel, a new voice came through their comms. Extraction vehicle on approach. Prepare for immediate departure. The helicopter descended rapidly, touching down on the helipad. The side door slid open to reveal Thompson at the controls and Johnson manning a mounted weapon system. Got multiple vehicles approaching from the access road, Johnson reported. Government and military configurations. Carter secured Zakharov in the helicopter, while Reynolds maintained defensive position at the roof edge. Ghost time to go, Carter called. Reynolds fired 2 more precision shots, then back toward the helicopter, never taking his eyes off the access point. As he reached the door, the roof access burst open, tactical teams emerging with weapons raised. Reynolds now, Carter shouted. The veteran sniper made his decision in a fraction of a second, diving into the helicopter as Johnson opened fire with the mounted system, laying down suppressive cover. Thompson pulled the helicopter into a steep climb, banking hard to the east as Bau's tracers cut through the night sky around them. All Guardians accounted for, Reynolds asked, securing himself as the helicopter accelerated. Reeves and Williams are at secondary extraction point, Thompson confirmed from the pilot's seat. Rendezvous in 20 minutes at fallback position Alpha. Carter checked Zakharov's vital signs, ensuring he remained stable during transport. What now? Morrison will have every asset hunting us within the hour. Reynolds' weathered face was illuminated by the helicopter's dim interior lighting, determination etched in every line. Now we do what your father couldn't 30 years ago. We expose the entire network. The fallback position was an abandoned Cold War communications bunker hidden deep in the Appalachian wilderness. Built to withstand nuclear strikes, its reinforced concrete walls and electromagnetic shielding made it invisible to conventional detection methods. Inside, the team had established a secure operations center. Williams and Reeves had arrived ahead of them, already working to establish secure communications channels. Zakharov's secured in the medical bay, Thompson reported, returning from administering treatment. He'll remain sedated but stable for the next 6 hours. Reynolds nodded, then turned to the digital workstation where Reeves was analyzing data recovered from the facility's security system. What have we got? He asked. Reeves's fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. I managed to download approximately 40% of their secure server before the security countermeasures activated. Most is encrypted, but I'm running decryption algorithms now. Focus on communications between the facility and Fort Bragg, Carter suggested. If Morrison is directly involved, there should be evidence. Already on it, Reeves confirmed. I've isolated several encrypted transmissions between the facility and a secure terminal at Naval Intelligence Headquarters. Decryption will take time, but preliminary analysis shows consistent communication patterns over the past 3 months, increasing significantly in the week before our mission. Williams approached with a secure satellite phone. We have a problem. Naval Intelligence has issued an alert classifying all of us as national security threats. They're implementing full-spectrum surveillance and have authorized deadly force. Carter's expression hardened. Morrison's moving to contain the situation. Not just Morrison, Williams replied grimly. The alert carries multiple authorization codes, including 2 from Pentagon officials outside Naval Intelligence. Reynolds considered this development. Zakharov was telling the truth. The network extends beyond Morrison. How do we fight something this entrenched? Johnson asked, cleaning his weapon nearby. The same way intelligence wars have always been won, Reynolds answered, with irrefutable evidence delivered to the right people. He turned to Carter. Your father discovered something in Berlin that threatened their entire operation. They killed him to keep it buried. Now we have Zakharov physical evidence of the ambush and digital records connecting Morrison to the operation. But we need one more thing. What's that? Carter asked. The original evidence your father discovered, Reynolds replied. I believe it's still hidden where he concealed it 30 years ago. The room fell silent as the implications settled in. How could evidence from 1989 still exist? Reeves questioned. And how would you know where to find it? Reynolds' weathered face softened slightly with an old memory. Because your father told me where he hid it moments before he sent us to the extraction point. It was too dangerous to retrieve then with Soviet forces closing in. But he made me memorize the location coordinates and a description of the hiding place. Why didn't you retrieve it after Berlin? Carter asked. I tried, Reynolds admitted, but I was hospitalized for 3 months with injuries from the extraction. By the time I recovered, the area had been completely reconstructed after the wall came down. The building where he hid the evidence was demolished, the entire block redeveloped. So the evidence is lost, Johnson concluded. Not necessarily, Reynolds countered. Jack described hiding it inside a particular structural support column in the building's basement. Those columns would have extended down to the foundation. Even if the building was demolished, the foundations might have remained intact beneath whatever was built on top. Carter processed this possibility. So we need to go to Berlin. Not all of us, Reynolds decided after a moment of consideration. Too conspicuous. A small team with the right equipment might be able to locate and recover the evidence if it still exists. I'll go, Carter volunteered immediately. It's my father's legacy. Reynolds nodded. I'll go with you. I know exactly what we're looking for and where. Reeves should come too. Her electronic countermeasure skills will be essential for evading surveillance. What about the rest of us? Johnson asked. You, Williams, and Thompson will secure Zakharov and continue analyzing the digital evidence, Reynolds instructed. If we're compromised in Berlin, you'll be our fallback position. As they prepared for the Berlin operation, Reeves approached Carter privately. Commander, I've managed to decrypt a portion of the facility's communications. There's something you need to see. She showed him a series of encrypted messages between Morrison and another party whose identity remained concealed behind sophisticated encryption protocols. The content suggests Morrison is receiving orders, not giving them, Reeves explained. Whoever is running this operation has authority over an admiral. Carter studied the partial decryption. Can you identify the other party? Not yet, Reeves admitted, but the encryption methodology has distinctive patterns consistent with certain government security protocols. This isn't just some rogue operation, it has official sanction at some level. Carter's expression darkened, which means we're not just fighting Morrison. We're potentially up against elements of our own government. Exactly, Reeves confirmed grimly. And they have the resources to make us disappear permanently if we're caught. The flight to Berlin was arranged through the Guardian Protocols Network, a private charter using falsified credentials and flying through countries with minimal extradition agreements with the United States. Reynolds, Carter, and Reeves traveled as business consultants, their equipment disguised as standard commercial technology. The location your father described would be in what is now the Mead District, Reynolds explained as their taxi navigated through Berlin's evening traffic. Most of East Berlin was dramatically redeveloped after reunification. Carter studied the city through the taxi window, trying to imagine what it had looked like during the Cold War. What exactly are we looking for? Your father discovered documentation connecting American intelligence officials to a KGB operation called Project Echo, a communications network designed to survive conventional warfare disruption, Reynolds explained quietly. He hid microfilm containing names, operational details, and financial transfers in a hollow space inside a structural column in the basement of an apartment building near Checkpoint Charlie. After 30 years, what are the chances it's still there? Reeves asked skeptically. Minimal, Reynolds acknowledged, but structural foundations are often preserved during redevelopment, especially in historic districts. The column might still exist beneath whatever stands there now. The taxi dropped them near Checkpoint Charlie, now a tourist attraction commemorating the Cold War division of the city. Using handheld navigation equipment, Reynolds led them through winding streets until they reached a modern office building occupying the entire block where the apartment building had once stood. This is it, Reynolds confirmed, checking his coordinates. The old building would have occupied this corner of the block. Security, Carter asked, scanning the perimeter professionally. Standard commercial setup. Reeves reported, monitoring her specialized equipment. Automated systems, minimal on-site personnel at night. Nothing we can't handle. They established a surveillance position in a cafe across the street, observing the building's security patterns while finalizing their infiltration plan. As darkness settled over the city, they moved into position. Reeves bypassed the electronic security system with the practiced efficiency, creating a blind spot in the surveillance coverage. Carter disabled the secondary alarm system, while Reynolds, despite his age, moved with the fluid grace of a career operator as they accessed the building's maintenance entrance. Basement access should be through the utility corridor, Reynolds directed, consulting the building schematics they'd obtained through the Guardian network. The basement level was a modern utility area, housing HVAC systems, electrical panels, and network infrastructure. Nothing remained visible from the Cold War-era structure. This doesn't look promising, Carter observed, scanning the renovated space. Reynolds moved methodically through the basement, counting paces from what would have been the original building's corner. The support column would have been approximately here. He indicated a section of wall now covered by electrical conduits. Using specialized equipment, they scanned the wall for structural anomalies. There's something behind this section, Reeves reported, studying the imaging display. Older concrete with a different density signature than the surrounding material. That's it, Reynolds confirmed, his weathered face revealing momentary emotion. The original foundation structure. Working quickly, they removed the wall panel, revealing the edge of a concrete column embedded within the newer construction. Reynolds examined it carefully, his fingers tracing the surface until he found a slight irregularity, a small section where the concrete had a subtly different texture. Jack described creating a cache using quick-setting plaster to match the surrounding concrete, Reynolds explained, taking a specialized drill from his equipment case. It should be right here. He drilled carefully into the marked section, the specialized bit designed for minimal noise and dust. After penetrating approximately 3 inches, the drill suddenly encountered empty space. "Found it," Reynolds announced quietly, a mixture of vindication and old grief crossing his features. "After 30 years, we found it." Using a flexible extraction tool with a small camera attachment, they explored the hollow space within the column. The camera revealed a small metal container, its surface corroded, but intact. "Can you extract it?" Carter asked, tension evident in his voice. Reynolds nodded, manipulating the extraction tool with precision that defied his age. Slowly, carefully, he withdrew the metal container from its decades-long hiding place. The container was a standard military-issue waterproof document case designed to protect sensitive materials in extreme conditions. Despite years of concealment, its seal had maintained integrity. "We should move to a secure location before opening it." Reeves advised, monitoring their security equipment. "Building security will begin their rounds in approximately 12 minutes. They restored the wall panel to its original condition and exfiltrated through the same route they had entered, leaving no evidence of their presence. The extraction was completed with the same professional efficiency that had characterized all Guardian Protocol operations: invisible, untraceable, deniable. In their secure hotel suite, Reynolds carefully opened the sealed container. Inside was a set of microfilm slides meticulously labeled and preserved against environmental degradation. "Your father was thorough," Reynolds noted with quiet pride as he examined the microfilm. "Military intelligence training at its finest." Using specialized equipment, they projected the microfilm contents onto a blank wall. The documents that appeared contained operational details of Project Echo, the covert communications network established during the Cold War. Included were installation locations, technical specifications, and most critically, a list of American officials involved in its operation. Carter scanned the documents with growing tension. There, he pointed to a name on the third slide: Robert Morrison, Naval Intelligence Liaison. "He was just a lieutenant then," Reynolds observed, "a junior player in a much larger operation." "But look at the command authorization." Reeves indicated another section of the document. "Project Echo was officially sanctioned by this individual, Colonel Edward Hargrove." Reynolds' expression hardened with recognition. Hargrove. He was Deputy Director of Defense Intelligence in the late 1980s. "And now," Carter asked. "General Edward Hargrove," Reeves replied, her voice dropping slightly, "the current Director of National Intelligence." The implication hung in the air between them. They weren't just facing a rogue admiral or a Cold War relic like Zakharov. They were potentially confronting one of the most powerful intelligence figures in the United States government. This explains why Morrison's career accelerated after Berlin, Reynolds said, connecting the fragments. Hargrove protected him, promoted him, positioned him to continue managing the network as it evolved from Cold War intelligence gathering to something more entrepreneurial. "But why target my team now?" Carter questioned. "Why risk exposing the operation after all these years of successful concealment?" "Because you were getting too close to one of their active nodes," Reynolds explained. "The facility your team was sent to investigate in the Appalachians must be part of the original Echo network repurposed for modern operations." "Not just repurposed," Reeves added, studying another slide. "According to these specifications, the original Echo network was designed to create untraceable communication channels outside official government monitoring, perfect for modern cyber operations, financial transactions, or intelligence trading." Carter processed this revelation. "So Hargrove and Morrison have been running a shadow intelligence network for 30 years using infrastructure built during the Cold War. My father discovered it in 1989, and they killed him to protect it. Then they tried to kill my team for the same reason. And they'll come after us next," Reynolds concluded grimly. "Once they realize Zakharov is missing and the Berlin evidence has been recovered, they'll deploy every resource at their disposal." "So what's our move?" Reeves asked, secure wiping the projection equipment. Reynolds considered their options. "We need to get this evidence to someone with the authority and integrity to act on it, someone outside Hargrove's influence sphere." "Inspector General Hughes," Carter suggested. Reynolds mentioned him earlier. "If he's trustworthy, he'll have the authority to initiate an official investigation." "It's risky," Reeves cautioned. "If Hargrove has infiltrated other parts of the intelligence community, Hughes could be compromised as well." We have no choice but to trust someone, Reynolds replied. And Hughes has a reputation for absolute integrity. He investigated several classified operations during my active service period, always following evidence regardless of political pressure. Then we go to Hughes, Carter decided, but not directly. We establish secure verification protocols, first test his reactions with partial information before revealing our position or the full evidence. Reynolds nodded approvingly. Your father would have suggested the same approach. Back in the United States, the remaining Guardian team had continued analyzing the digital evidence while maintaining surveillance on Morrison's activities. When Reynolds, Carter, and Reeves arrived at the fallback position, Williams greeted them with urgent news. Morrison's gone dark, he reported. Disappeared from official channels 12 hours ago. Pentagon sources indicate he's taken emergency leave for personal reasons. He knows, Reynolds concluded. Someone tipped him off about Zakharov's extraction. That's not all, Johnson added, approaching from the communication station. Surveillance intercepted encrypted communications between multiple military installations. They're implementing elevated security protocols consistent with national security threat response. Hargrove is mobilizing resources, Carter observed grimly. How's our guest? Conscious but uncooperative, Thompson replied. He's revealed nothing further about the operation or his connections. Has the Inspector General been located? Reynolds asked. Williams nodded. Hughes is currently at the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, participating in a classified intelligence symposium. Security is substantial, but not impenetrable. Our window is closing, Carter stated. If Hargrove realizes we have the Berlin evidence, he'll ensure Hughes is either compromised or isolated. Reynolds studied the tactical map, his experienced eyes assessing approach vectors and security patterns. We need two simultaneous operations. Team 1 delivers the evidence to Hughes in Newport. Team 2 maintains custody of Zakharov as insurance and continues monitoring Morrison's movements. I'll take the evidence to Hughes, Carter volunteered, with Reeves for electronic countermeasures support. Reynolds nodded. Johnson, Williams, and I will handle Zakharov and monitor for Morrison. Thompson provides medical support for both teams as needed. As they prepared for the final phase of the operation, Carter found a moment to speak privately with Reynolds. If this goes sideways, he began, I want you to know I understand why my father trusted you. These past few days have shown me what that generation of operators was capable of. Reynolds' weathered face softened slightly. Your father was the finest man I ever served with. He believed some principles were worth dying for. The old sniper's eyes held Carter steadily. But he'd be proud that his son found a way to live for those same principles. Carter extended his hand. When this is over, I want to hear the real stories about him, not the sanitized versions they told his family. Reynolds clasped his hand firmly. When this is over, I'll tell you everything he would have wanted you to know. The Naval War College campus overlooked Narragansett Bay, its historic buildings housing some of the nation's most advanced strategic thinking. The Classified Intelligence Symposium was being held in a secure wing of Spruance Hall, with multiple layers of security protecting its participants. Carter and Reeves approached using cover identities established through the Guardian network, a naval intelligence officer and his technical advisor arriving with updated briefing materials. Their credentials would withstand initial scrutiny, but wouldn't survive deep verification, giving them a narrow operational window. Security checkpoint ahead, Reeves murmured as they approached the main entrance. Standard verification protocols, but they're conducting secondary authentication for all visitors. Expected, Carter replied quietly. Maintain operational cover and proceed with authentication. If compromised, implement contingency echo. They approached the security checkpoint with professional confidence, presenting their credentials with practiced ease. The guard examined them carefully, comparing their photographs to their faces. Purpose of visit, he asked, entering their information into the verification system. Updated threat assessment briefing for Inspector General Hughes, Carter replied smoothly. Priority authorization Indigo 7. The security code, a legitimate classification he'd learned during his intelligence training, triggered the expected response. The guard checked a separate authorization list, then nodded. Inspector General Hughes is in briefing room 342. You'll need secondary authentication at the inner checkpoint. They proceeded through the first security layer, moving toward the building's secure wing. As they approached the inner checkpoint, Reeves subtly activated a specialized electronic device concealed in her briefcase. 30-second window, she murmured as they presented their credentials again. The device was creating a momentary loop in the verification system, causing it to display cached authentication results rather than completing a new verification query. The security officer examined their credentials, compared them to his display, and nodded. "You'll be escorted to the briefing room," he informed them, signaling to a nearby officer. The escort led them through secure corridors to the third floor, where additional security personnel monitored all movement. Outside briefing room 342, the escort requested their final identification. "I'll inform the Inspector General of your arrival," he stated after verifying their credentials once more. As the escort entered the briefing room, Reeves checked her concealed monitoring device. "We have approximately 3 minutes before the system resets and flags our credentials as irregular." The escort returned momentarily. "Inspector General Hughes will see you now." They entered the briefing room to find a solitary figure, a lean, gray-haired man with the unmistakable bearing of career military intelligence. Hughes studied them with analytical precision as the door closed behind them. "I don't recognize either of you," he stated bluntly, "and I know every officer in my direct reporting chain." "That's because we're not in your reporting chain, sir," Carter replied, abandoning the pretense. "I'm Lieutenant Commander James Carter, SEAL Team Echo. This is Major Rachel Reeves, also of Echo. We have information critical to national security that only you can act upon." Hughes's expression remained neutral, but his posture shifted slightly. "SEAL Team Echo was involved in an incident in the Appalachians 2 days ago. Naval intelligence has classified that operation." "Because the operation was compromised from within naval intelligence itself," Carter stated. "Specifically by Admiral Morrison, acting under the direction of General Edward Hargrove." Hughes's eyes narrowed, his only visible reaction to this explosive claim. "Those are serious allegations against 2 of our highest-ranking intelligence officers. I assume you have evidence supporting them." "We do," Carter confirmed, removing a secure data device from his inner pocket. "This contains documentation of a covert operation called Project Echo, established during the Cold War and maintained illegally for 30 years. My father discovered it in Berlin in 1989 and was killed to prevent its exposure. My team nearly suffered the same fate when we unknowingly approached one of its modern operational nodes." Hughes made no move to accept the device. "How did you obtain this alleged evidence?" "Some of it was recovered from Berlin, where my father concealed it before his death," Carter explained. "Additional digital confirmation was extracted from a facility where Admiral Morrison is actively collaborating with former KGB operative Viktor Zakharov." "Zakharov is dead," Hughes stated flatly. "He was killed in Grozny in 1996. "Zakharov is very much alive," Reeves countered, "and currently in protective custody, along with physical evidence connecting him to Morrison." Hughes considered this information, his analytical mind visibly processing the implications. "Why come to me?" "Because your record indicates absolute commitment to operational integrity, regardless of political pressure," Carter replied. "And because you're one of the few senior intelligence officials with the authority to initiate an investigation at this level without prior approval from either Morrison or Hargrove." For a long moment, Hughes remained silent, his expression unreadable. Then he reached for a secure phone on the conference table. "I need to verify certain elements of your claim before proceeding." "Sir, with respect," Carter interjected urgently, "any verification through official channels will alert the very network we're exposing. They have active surveillance on all communication related to this matter." Hughes paused, his hand hovering over the phone. "What do you propose instead?" "Examine the evidence first," Carter suggested. "It speaks for itself. Then use secure channels outside the standard intelligence communication network to assemble a trustworthy investigation team." After another moment of consideration, Hughes nodded once and accepted the data device. "I'll review this immediately. Wait here." He moved to a secure terminal in the corner of the room, inserted the device, and began examining its contents with focused attention. Minutes passed in tense silence as he scrolled through document after document, his expression growing progressively more grave. Finally, he removed the data and returned to the conference table. "If verified, this evidence suggests a conspiracy at the highest levels of our intelligence community, a conspiracy that has operated undetected for 30 years. "Not entirely undetected," Carter corrected quietly. "My father detected it. He died for it." Hughes's professional demeanor softened momentarily. I knew Jack Carter. His operational record was exceptional. He straightened decision made. I'll initiate Emergency Protocol 7, a special investigation overseen directly by the Senate Intelligence Committee, bypassing standard intelligence channels entirely. There's one more thing, sir, Reeves added. Admiral Morrison has disappeared from official monitoring. We believe he's aware of our operation and may be implementing contingency measures to eliminate evidence or witnesses. Hughes moved to a different secure terminal, one not connected to standard military networks. I'll deploy independent security assets to locate and contain Morrison immediately. He turned back to Carter and Reeves. Where is Zakharov being held? That information is compartmentalized for operational security, Carter replied carefully. We can establish secure contact protocols once the investigation team is assembled and vetted. Hughes nodded, understanding the caution. You've operated outside official channels, potentially violated numerous regulations, and interfered with classified operations. Under normal circumstances, you'd both be facing court-martial. We understand the potential consequences, sir, Carter acknowledged. But the alternative was allowing the compromise of American intelligence operations to continue unchecked. Your father made the same calculation in Berlin, Hughes noted. It cost him his life, but ultimately he was right. The Inspector General's expression hardened with determination. I'll ensure his sacrifice wasn't in vain. But guy. The fallback position remained secure, its Cold War-era defenses providing both physical protection and electronic isolation. Reynolds monitored communications while Johnson maintained perimeter security. Thompson continued monitoring Zakharov, whose condition remained stable but deteriorating due to his injuries and extended sedation. Any contact from Carter and Reeves, Williams asked, returning from surveillance rotation. Reynolds checked the secure communication system. Not yet, but no alarm indicators either, which suggests they've successfully made contact with Hughes. And if they haven't, Johnson questioned, cleaning his weapon nearby, then we implement Contingency Omega, Reynolds replied grimly. Full public disclosure through pre-established media contacts with all evidence simultaneously released through multiple channels. Nuclear option, Williams observed. Guaranteed mutual destruction. Reynolds nodded, but necessary if all other options fail. This ends now one way or another. After 30 years, Jack Carter's evidence finally reaches the right people. The secure communication system suddenly activated, indicating an incoming transmission on their emergency channel. Reynolds verified the authentication protocols before accepting. Ghost 6, this is Wolfhound. Carter's voice came through clearly. Package delivered successfully. Recipient has initiated Protocol 7. Authentication code Sierra Echo Tango. Relief briefly crossed Reynolds' weathered features. Wolfhound, this is Ghost 6. Authentication confirmed. Proceed to Rendezvous Point Delta for extraction and integration. Copy that, Ghost 6. ETA 4 hours. Wolfhound out. Reynolds turned to his team. They've done it. Hughes has accepted the evidence and initiated an independent investigation through the Senate Intelligence Committee. What about Hargrove? Johnson asked. Protocol 7 includes immediate containment of all implicated personnel, regardless of rank, Williams explained. Even the Director of National Intelligence isn't immune. And Morrison, Thompson questioned from the medical station. Still unaccounted for, Reynolds acknowledged, which makes him the most dangerous variable in the equation. We maintain full security protocols until Carter and Reeves return and Zakharov is transferred to Hughes' security team. As if in response to his words, the perimeter alarm activated a subtle vibration rather than an audible alert designed to warn of approach, without revealing that detection had occurred. Multiple vehicles approaching from the south access road. Williams reported checking the monitoring equipment. Military configuration, tactical approach pattern. Reynolds moved immediately to the observation position. Morrison, he concluded, after studying the approaching vehicles through high-powered optics, leading a private tactical team. No official military or intelligence markings. Deniable operation, Johnson assessed, moving to a defensive position. He's desperate. As he should be, Reynolds replied, retrieving his rifle with practiced efficiency despite his age. His entire career, his freedom, his legacy, all hanging in the balance. Extraction options? Thompson asked, preparing to move their sedated prisoner. Secondary escape tunnel leads to the northeastern ridge, Williams replied. Vehicle cache located 2 miles from tunnel exit. Reynolds considered their tactical situation with the calm assessment of a career operator. Johnson Williams prepares Zakharov for immediate evacuation through the tunnel. Thompson coordinate with Carter and Reeves redirect them to secondary rendezvous point. "What about you?" Johnson asked, recognizing the implications. Reynolds checked his rifle with methodical precision. "I'll cover your withdrawal and implement delayed pursuit protocols." The three veterans exchanged glances, understanding the likely outcome of Reynolds' decision. "Ghost," Johnson began. "This isn't negotiable, Bear." Reynolds cut him off. "Securing Zakharov and the evidence is the mission priority. Everything else is secondary." Johnson held his old friend's gaze for a long moment, then nodded once, a soldier's acknowledgement of operational necessity. "It's been an honor, Ghost." "The honor was always mine," Reynolds replied simply. "Now move. You have 8 minutes before they breach the outer perimeter." As his teammates prepared for evacuation, Reynolds established firing positions covering all potential approach vectors. Through his scope, he could see Morrison directing the tactical team, splitting them into assault groups, establishing communication protocols, preparing for a coordinated breach. Reynolds smiled grimly. After 30 years, he would finally confront one of the men responsible for Jack Carter's death. Not how he had envisioned it, perhaps, but fitting nonetheless. "Ghost 6 extraction team ready," Williams reported through their tactical communication system. "Tunnel access secured." "Proceed with extraction," Reynolds confirmed. "Maintain radio silence until reaching vehicle cache." "Confirmed," Williams acknowledged. "Good hunting, Ghost." Reynolds settled into his firing position, adjusting his scope with the same precise movements that had made him a legend among special operations snipers. Age had diminished some of his physical capabilities, but 30 years of experience more than compensated for what time had taken. Through his scope, he watched Morrison's tactical team approach the outer perimeter, moving with professional efficiency. They were good, obviously selected for this specific operation rather than standard military units. This would be a contest of skill rather than simply marksmanship. Reynolds controlled his breathing, his heart rate slowing as he entered the focused state that had allowed him to make impossible shots for decades. The first target moved into position, establishing a fire support base for the main assault team. Reynolds exhaled slowly, finger taking up the first pressure on his trigger. One last mission for Ghost. Storm. 6 hours later, Carter and Reeves arrived at the secondary rendezvous point, an isolated cabin deep in National Forest land. They found Johnson, Williams, and Thompson waiting with Zakharov, secured and stable. "Where's Reynolds?" Carter asked immediately, noting the absence of the veteran sniper. The three old warriors exchanged glances, a lifetime of shared operational experience, communicating what words couldn't adequately express. "Reynolds implemented delay tactics to ensure our extraction," Williams explained professionally. "Morrison's team breached the fallback position approximately 40 minutes after our departure." Carter absorbed this with growing tension. "And no communication since," Johnson admitted. "But the operational window he created allowed us to extract Zakharov and all evidence materials without pursuit." "We need to go back for him," Carter insisted. Thompson shook his head. "The fallback position is completely compromised. Satellite imagery shows military vehicles and personnel throughout the area. A rescue attempt would be suicide." Reynolds knew the tactical realities, Williams added quietly. He made his choice. Carter struggled with the implications, professional discipline warring with personal loyalty. "What about Morrison?" "Still unaccounted for," Johnson replied, "but we intercepted encrypted communications indicating a major security operation has been implemented at the Pentagon. Protocol 7 appears to be in full effect." "Inspector General Hughes has assembled a special investigative team," Reeves confirmed. "They're prepared to take custody of Zakharov and all evidence materials within the next 12 hours. "So we just abandoned Reynolds," Carter questioned, the conflict evident in his voice. "We complete the mission," Johnson corrected firmly. "Just as Reynolds would insist. Just as your father would have insisted 30 years ago." Carter recognized the truth in these words, though it did nothing to ease the weight of the decision. "What's our next move?" "Secure transfer of Zakharov and all evidence to Hughes's team," Williams outlined. "Then operational dissolution according to Guardian Protocol standard procedures. Each operator returns to established cover identities until investigation conclusions are announced." "And Reynolds?" Carter pressed. The three veterans remained silent for a moment before Johnson answered. We honor his sacrifice by ensuring it wasn't in vain. The evidence reaches the right people. The conspiracy is exposed. Justice is finally delivered for your father and all others who felt protecting American interests against this internal threat. Carter nodded slowly, accepting the operational reality, if not the emotional cost. Then let's finish it. For Reynolds, for my father, for all of them. 3 months later, Carter stood at Arlington National Cemetery watching as an honor guard prepared for a ceremony decades overdue. Inspector General Hughes' investigation had revealed the full scope of Project Echo and the conspiracy surrounding it. General Hargrove had been arrested along with 12 other senior intelligence officials. Admiral Morrison had been found dead in an apparent suicide, though investigation into the circumstances continued. Most significantly for Carter personally, his father's official record had been corrected. Jack Carter had died in Berlin in 1989, not in a training accident, as the sanitized record had claimed, but in a classified operation defending American interests against a threat from within. Today he would receive posthumous recognition for his sacrifice. A familiar figure approached across the perfectly maintained grounds, Inspector General Hughes in full-dress uniform. "Commander Carter," he greeted formally. "The ceremony will begin shortly. Your mother has arrived and is being escorted to the seating area." Carter nodded acknowledgement. "Any word on Reynolds?" Hughes' expression revealed nothing. "Still classified, I'm afraid. The tactical team Morrison led that day consisted of private contractors operating without official sanction. The site was completely vacant when official forces arrived approximately 2 hours later." "Meaning either Reynolds was captured or he escaped," Carter concluded. "Or neither," Hughes replied enigmatically. "In my experience, operators like William Reynolds often create their own alternatives when standard options prove insufficient." Before Carter could press further, Hughes gestured toward the ceremony area. "We should join the others. Your father has waited 30 years for this recognition. It wouldn't do to delay it further." As they walked, Hughes added quietly, "One more thing, Commander. Effective immediately, you're being reassigned to a specialized intelligence assessment unit under my direct authority. Your experience with both traditional military operations and less conventional intervention methodologies makes you uniquely qualified." Carter recognized the implication immediately. "The Guardian Protocol." "Officially, no such protocol exists," Hughes replied carefully. "Unofficially, recent events have demonstrated the occasional necessity for capabilities outside standard operational parameters." "And my team?" Carter asked. "Major Reeves has already accepted a similar reassignment," Hughes confirmed. "The others will receive appropriate offers based on their specializations." As they approached the ceremony area, Carter caught sight of a distant figure standing beneath a tree on the cemetery's perimeter. An older man in a dark suit, too far away to identify clearly, but something about his posture seemed familiar. "One moment, sir," Carter told Hughes, his attention fixed on the distant figure. Hughes followed his guidance and smiled slightly. "Take your time, Commander. Some ghosts deserve acknowledgement." Carter moved across the immaculate grounds toward the solitary figure. As he drew closer, recognition crystallized into certainty. Despite the bruising still visible on his face and the careful way he held himself, William Reynolds' unmistakable bearing remained unchanged. "They said you were missing," Carter stated simply when he reached the old sniper. "I've been missing officially for almost 30 years, Reynolds replied, his weathered face showing the ghost of a smile. "It's a comfortable status once you adapt to its limitations." Morrison's team received more resistance than anticipated, Reynolds answered with professional understatement. "I implemented extraction protocols after ensuring sufficient delay for your team's escape." Carter nodded, understanding the tactical reality behind the measured words. "Hughes has offered me a position, something that sounds remarkably like official sanction for the Guardian Protocol." "The wheel turns," Reynolds observed philosophically. "What was once condemned becomes essential when perspective shifts." "Will you come to the ceremony?" Carter asked. "My father would have wanted you there." Reynolds glanced toward the gathering. "My presence might raise uncomfortable questions for certain attendees. Your father would understand operational security priorities." "He might," Carter acknowledged, "but I'm asking anyway." The old sniper considered this, then nodded once. "For Jack, and for his son." As they walked together toward the ceremony, Reynolds added quietly, "There will always be threats, Commander, external and internal. visible, and hidden. The uniform changes, the enemy evolves, but the mission remains constant, protecting American interests against all threats, no matter their origin. Sounds like the Guardian Protocol, Carter observed. The protocol was never about operating outside the system, Reynolds corrected. It was about protecting the system from those who would corrupt it from within. Sometimes that requires unconventional methods, but the objective never changes. They reached the ceremony area just as the honor guard took position. Among the assembled officials, Carter recognized Johnson, Williams, and Thompson. In civilian attire, their weathered faces solemn with 3 decades of accumulated memory. As the ceremony began, Carter stood between his past and his future, the aging warriors who had served alongside his father and the new generation who would carry forward their legacy of service. Different methods perhaps, but the same core mission. The wheel turns, but some things remain constant. Reynolds stood at attention as the honor guard began the ceremony, his posture perfect, despite his years and recent injuries. For a brief moment, Carter caught a glimpse of the young sniper his father had known, the legend who had never missed a shot that mattered. Until Zakharov. Until the day in the valley when age had finally caught up with even the legendary Ghost. Yet that miss had set in motion everything that followed: the connection between father and son across 30 years, the exposure of a conspiracy that had remained hidden for decades, the final justice for Jack Carter and all those who had fallen protecting American interests. Sometimes even the greatest snipers miss their target, and sometimes those misses change history. As the ceremony concluded, Carter found himself standing alongside Reynolds at his father's newly marked grave. The older man placed a hand briefly on the headstone, a gesture of farewell 3 decades overdue. "He would be proud," Reynolds said simply, "of everything you've accomplished, everything you've become." "I had good examples to follow," Carter replied, "and occasionally an invisible guardian watching over me." Reynolds smiled slightly. "Not invisible anymore." "No," Carter agreed, "not anymore." The mission that had begun in Berlin 30 years earlier was finally complete. The evidence had reached its destination. The conspiracy had been exposed. Justice long delayed had finally been delivered, and a father's legacy had been preserved through his son. The Guardian Protocol would continue under new management, evolving to face new threats with new methods. But its core principle would remain unchanged, protecting American interests against all threats, external and internal, visible and hidden. For some missions never truly end. They simply pass to the next generation of Guardians.